Hey everybody, and welcome to this episode of It's Your Birthday. We got you a gift, and guess what? It's video games. I'm your host, Kelly Workman. I'm joined by my co-host, Christian Langton. Christian, how you doing today, bud?
Hey, I'm good. Doing good, man. Lots been going on this week, both personally and in the landscape of things. I
Sure.
want to start by saying, first off, every ISP on the planet is ran by a lifeless demon in a suit
Yeah,
that specifically lives to feast off of misery. That is
yeah,
my assumption of every single executive in a chaired position in an ISP.
yeah. And they
I
do a very good job too of sucking the life out. They do a great job, and they charge you to do it. The ability to suck your soul out. They make you pay for that, which is cool.
Yeah, hey, do you want unlimited data on a plan that should be competitively priced based on other packages in your immediate area that are better than what you have?
Yeah.
Fork it over, buddy. So, getting back to what makes me hate them is today I get a text from my girlfriend, and she's
Mhm.
like, "Hey, internet's down at the apartment." Well, fuck me. We're supposed to be recording tonight, so that shit can't fly. So I open
Yeah.
up the app on my phone and I'm like, okay, let me see what's going on. No, the bill's paid. That's not the problem. Money is never an issue. Never an issue,
Right.
except for when it is.
Right.
Um,
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah.
yeah. And so
Absolutely.
I pull up the data cap thing, and it's like you have used approximately all of this shit.
Man,
And I'm
in
like,
in 13 days, that's pretty wild.
well, considering a lot of streaming
Oh,
went on
sure.
with
Yeah.
QuakeCon and like downloading free games,
Right.
Game Pass just recently had a new slew of games come out, so I was like, "Fuck yeah, downloading shit, fucking running through the internet tubes, like fucking
Yeah.
give me all the data, all of it. I want it right now. I don't want it later. I want it today, and I want it in
Mhm.
20 minutes." But I get it in an hour and a half, and I get fucking raked over it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I had a beautiful experience with, AT&T as well recently because, or before we moved to this apartment because, yeah, it was the same thing. It was like I think I was texting you, it was like, what, 30 megabytes, down, 5 up maybe on a good day, and then our internet would also go out every single day because they wired it to where it was hanging. They didn't wire it through the rest of the building where the other people are because we were on the corner slot. So what they did is they ran a wire up the other building and then across ours, even though we already had lines from it previously because it's the only service we could get at that apartment was non-fiber, just straight AT&T, whatever the cheapest thing
wait,
they offer
so
is.
you're telling me that they had a physical line going over your building? Like,
No, from the neighbor building over a drive-through, and then
okay,
ours on the second floor. But what would happen is not even weather dependent, because for some reason when it was bad weather, it didn't go out. But
yeah,
it randomly every day at some point it would go out just because. And then but yeah, it would be like I said, like 30 down, or yeah, 30 down, 5 up, and 50 a month with a terabyte cap. And then we switched to Spectrum, which is 400 megs, and I think 20 up, and then no cap, and it's like I think it's $70 as opposed to 50. But even their lowest end is 200, and it's the same price as the AT&T, and with no cap and better up and better down. It's just like it's
yeah.
pretty
You're
shitty. It's
so
pretty insane.
we have a friend that we go to the LAN parties, and he's got the gigabyte
Ah,
gigabit internet speeds. It's
he's got the
incredible.
dream speeds. Yeah,
You get there and it's like, okay, I better get my downloads out of the way right now.
yeah,
But everybody has that same idea, so the router gets throttled. And we're like, fuck, I'm
yeah.
downloading this shit at like 2 megabytes a second. What's going on?
Yeah,
Uh,
but even still, most of the time is just like once one finishes, everybody kicks back up again, and it's really not even that bad.
yeah,
There's like 8 people downloading like 100 gigs at a time, and it's still like fine. Like you can still play on it mostly. Like it sometimes throttles a bit, but
yeah.
even still, yeah, it's like, all right, everybody's going to bed. All right, let's start these 8 downloads, and then I'll be back tomorrow. And then like even though I only really have to wait like 20 minutes,
Yeah, and
and
so
it's
like, but
crazy.
he lives within, I don't know, I would say at least 8 miles of me at this point. Recently moved, he's got gigabit internet speeds, and I'm over here paying what is probably not much less, or not much more or less than what he's paying for 100 down. And
Yeah.
that is a fucking scam. And
See, and
and
that's
I
even better. That's better than what we had. What did you say you paid for it a month?
So right now, or I was paying like 60 with some taxes, equipment fees, whatever, and then for the unlimited, it's a $30 charge for them to
Jesus
say, for them to
Christ.
open up the floodgates and say, hey, today's technology, games are 250 gigabytes plus, but you have a terabyte of that each month, and good luck if a patch comes out for that game. I'm speaking of Call of Duty, of course.
Yeah, of course. I was about to say you're only paying for the ability to use Call of Duty. That's like
Yeah,
the whole monthly cap is just Call of Duty patches.
and then we're coming into a streaming future where XCloud and PlayStation's starting to ramp up their PS Now services a bit more, and like Stadia and all these like cloud streaming services are coming together. And it's like, if people are running into this and they're, not to say I'm like the most tech savvy, but let's say somebody a little lesser than me who wouldn't even think, oh, my internet's slow. Maybe it's not because of like some data cap. Oh, well, I'll just like deal with it, I guess.
Yeah.
That is like the consumer that's going to be the most interested in something like this, I think, is.
Yeah.
And I think the people are going to get fucked on that, because they're going to be streaming these games, and if they're not aware of their data caps, streaming technology, even if it's just video, it's still an exorbitant amount of data that we're going through, like
Yeah.
just in
Well,
general.
and that's even a person. Like, and you think then you add it to like, okay, well, we got what girlfriend's gonna be watching Netflix on this thing while I'm
Hmm.
downloading this thing, or like somebody streaming on this. And then if you have a larger family, it's still like, there's no because the physical media thing is gone. Like you think about movies and stuff. At least at that point, I mean, granted, it's still obviously better than it used to be when you'd have to actually, dial, physically dial up, and then you couldn't use the phone while that was happening and all this. Because I definitely remember those days. But it's
Hmm.
like, um, it's still like but we're far past that, and now it's like trying to like, oh, we gave you guys too much, so if we could reel it back in a little bit, so we realized we were being too generous, and we don't want to do that anymore, so we would like to take it back if you don't mind.
Hmm. I just
And
think
it's not,
that, like, I get that there is, literal power involved. There's infrastructure involved. There's data. There's like network stacks and like some data centers somewhere. So there is a cost associated with all that. I get it. But at the same time, I think it is very archaic to stick to, in the constantly online world we live in, is data caps. I just think
yeah,
it is anti consumer, and it goes against like the like forward momentum everyone in the world is enjoying, as far as like
yeah.
on demand entertainment, and the always online world of whatever. So
Well, and you think about it even on a more common scale, I guess, with like, I mean, because even there's still phone companies that do like, well, these you still have minutes, or this is your text limit, and it's like, dude, communication, you cannot be charging for this. Like, it's
yeah.
not that, like, it's not a lot to ask to be like, because especially in the world we live in now, as we move further and further towards this completely digital age of stuff, like it shouldn't be. It should just be state man. Like everyone should have a phone. Like even if you can, I mean, you should be allowed to opt out of it if you want, but that's on a case by case basis, as rather than like obviously if if you want a like obviously not everyone needs an iPhone 11 Pro Max or whatever the fuck, which is all that super expensive or whatever, but just baseline everyone should have, like, that network should be available
Hmm.
to everyone, because there's really no way to live or survive without it. I mean, even there's like, well, I mean, yeah, I don't know, it's just there. I was about to say something pretty bad, so I'm not going to, but there used to, but it's just, yeah, you can't get around without it anymore. There's just
Yeah.
no way to do it, because like all your information you get is digital. I mean, the mail services are. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I don't want to get, again. I don't really want to get political or anything, but it's crazy to me that they can like, we can do everything online, but a vote is not cool. And it's also like, but they can send you $1,200 in the mail, but that to you, but you checking a box and sending that in, that's not cool if that goes through the mail, which I
Yeah.
think is pretty buck wild. Which again, I don't really want to get into, but I'm just thinking of like, I mean, your entire financial stability and income is digitally saved somewhere, and
Hmm.
then for that to be totally fine, your whole well-being to be on this is fine, but for, a box to be checked and sent somewhere, that's like, you know, nationwide controversy, and you're like, "Jesus, guys, like, what?" It's just I don't know, we live in crazy times, I guess is what I'm
Crazy
saying.
times.
We live in crazy times, and space credits are more and more common every day.
Hey, they're
Uh,
getting more appealing because if I can turn in my American dollary dues into some nice cold hard digital cheddar, I will totally go for that. I'll get microchipped in the hand. Like I'll let Google put
oh,
lenses on
yeah.
my eyes so they can see everything I see. I'm willing to get absolutely railed by Tim Cook to even afford food.
Yeah.
I want to worship the Amazon robot overlords who hand me my gifts and my packages every day when I
Mhm.
open my door. It's gonna be Death Stranding. It's gonna
Damn
be
it.
Death Stranding.
You said Amazon packages every day, man? You really ain't hurting, are you, boy? You doing
Death
alright.
Stranding, Death Stranding. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
because in that game, eventually you unlock the ability to send these little robot legs with a platform on them, and it's like, all right,
Oh, I did, yeah.
get all
I
the way
did get
over to the
that.
capital not city. I want you to just go ahead and deliver this package. Also, I want the credit for it because robots aren't sentient. But that is
Yeah,
where we're
yeah.
going. Like the Bridges organization, aka Amazon, that's all
Yeah.
that's going to be left. That's all that's
Well,
going to
I
be
mean,
left.
obviously ran by Jeff Bridges, you know?
Yeah, of course.
Uh, well, shoot. Well,
Talking
let's get
video
into
games
proper
though.
video games maybe.
Yeah.
What have you been playing through this week? What have you been messing with?
So I've been it's been a weird week. I haven't
Mm,
had a whole lot of time to dedicate to just sitting down like I normally do. I think this weekend's going to be a lot of that.
fair.
But I actually picked up I Dracula Genesis based
Ah,
on
I
your
saw it on there.
recommendation.
I was curious.
Yeah.
So how do you like it?
So I'm not so far enough into it to understand all the systems up front, but the high level of it, like just starting the game kind of blind in, it's interesting. It's got a
Yeah.
really neat style that I like. I think
Mhm.
that's definitely what intrigued me the most is when I pulled up that trailer for the game. I was like, oh, okay, this has kind of this weird like pseudo 2D, 3D thing going on. And
Mhm.
I like those kind of weapon games. Like, I think like Enter the Gungeon's probably like a really
Mhm.
good example you could do of this, even though this game kind of has a little bit of that verticality going on.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Which I
but
think
I,
at times is to the game's detriment a little bit because I find the jumping to not be like as precise as you may want it. Again, it's early access, so that's to be expected a little bit, but
mhm.
that is maybe more of the well. And I will say too, like that is just
Sorry, I'm getting the trailer up.
I will say that is a good I think a good line in is just that's not every character has that. That's just one of the characters has that as their, their ability. So I think that's or their dodge move rather, more or less
Yeah,
is that. So they're not all done that way, but I think yeah, I think it's a definitely interesting and I think there's a ton to it. Yeah, this character here, that one's the one that's got the jump.
yeah.
But actually you see that there, that's the well that's the level up system. Like this jar of heads will come to you and
Mhm.
give you your level and it'll find you wherever you're at. Or I found that if you don't get it, it'll just show up in your ship when you go between levels, which is cool. So you don't lose out on that thing because I thought you might initially. And then yeah, this is like the system for unlocking different things. You go to this map, it'll give you the weapon, you'll do the challenge, and then you get that for any other run after that, which I think is neat. I think it's a good way to handle unlocks, especially when this game has there's so many of them.
Yeah, and you get the like two main weapon slots that you can see at the bottom. You also have a sidearm, and you come across like unlockable like upgrades that you can apply to each of these. I don't think you can apply upgrades or to the sidearms or certain upgrades to sidearms.
Yeah, no, the attachments are all for
Mm-hmm.
the other weapons, but but as far as I can tell, you can attach any attachment to any of the other guns, just not the starter weapon or the sidearm.
Yeah, and I was playing with controller, but it really almost does kind of feel like this game might play a little better with mouse and keyboard. Because
I can tell you it does. I've tried both. I started out with a controller thinking it would be a good twin stick, but you sort of want the precision of the mouse on this one.
I think if this looks at all really good to you and you're into the roguelike stuff, I'd recommend picking it up. Like I said, I want to dive more into it. Right now, I think in early access, they have plenty of content. Like every run that I've done so far has been pretty different. But the 4 characters I think they have right now,
Yeah.
2 of them or all 4 or 3 of them are unlockable, I think. But I don't know if it was a
Mhm.
bug. But if you die, do you start the game as like any of those characters, even if you don't own them?
Um, so I think there's an option to turn that on. I think
Okay.
there's an option to have that because you also I think if you hit C whenever you first boot in, it'll give you a character select so you can sort of switch.
Hmm.
And then there's later you unlock the ability because those are the characters, but then there's class types also that give you like an overarching set of modifiers that you unlock later, and then I think you unlock the ability to have I think up to 3 of them can be picked at a time, or not up to 3 can be picked, but you have the choice to pick out of 3 instead of just the one that randomly shows up every time.
Hmm.
So it again another additional layer of customization or just like random natureness to the game is added
And
through that, which I think is neat.
I think the one thing I don't like about it, if I had to criticize anything, is that I felt
Sure.
like sometimes the ammo was kind of in its own way. Because you have the sidearm, so when you run out of ammo, you know got to switch to the sidearm or find ammo or kill enemies or get items that drop ammo.
Mhm.
But from the get go, I think I still don't know if I quite understand it because I haven't looked a whole lot up of this game, like as far as guides or anything. But uh,
Yeah.
the ammo types, because it feels like when I have a certain weapon, I'm not necessarily sure what kind of ammo type it is visually.
Yeah,
Um,
well, generally speaking, it seems like from what I can tell, the game is only dropping ammo that you can use, but it doesn't mean it's gonna drop ones that are like just because your gun is empty. Like it may
mhm.
be only giving you ammo for your like your second or third weapon, even though you're really only wanted to use the first one. It does from what I can tell anyway, it seems like it doesn't give you ammo for weapons you don't have. Unless you sometimes I have noticed if you switched a weapon recently, it'll still give you ones for that previous weapon. But that's not happened a ton, so I'm not sure. But it's been a little bit since it's been about a week or 2 since I played it,
Yeah.
so I could be misspeaking here. But
And this thing kind of has something that the that other games have with the run based stuff is like you'll get weapons or you'll get items that are both cursed but give you a benefit.
mm.
Reminds me like recently Gunfire Reborn kind of brings me to that.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
and I had a lot of fun with Gunfire. This is strictly single player though. But I
as far as
think
I know so far, yeah.
it does kind of give me those same like Gunfire vibes in a way.
Hmm.
But I think it's just the nature of the genre. But yeah, I definitely recommend picking it up if you're at all interested in it.
I think it's
Um,
maybe $15. It might even be cheaper than that. I can't remember. I
yeah,
think I got it for 12 because I think it had like a launch sale or something. But you can definitely find it for relatively inexpensive.
yeah, and before we move on, like one other thing about the game and I still don't quite understand this system is that any NPC you can come across, you can either like straight up kill them if you prefer to. I don't know why you would, but you can also essentially rescue them or like
Yeah.
beam them out, and I don't know what effect that has necessarily.
So what that does is, at least as it sits, it'll give you additional item stuff or drops or money or something from them. It's basically like if you find the thing they offer to not be worthwhile, you just send them up. Because I once you take their whatever um whatever they're offering, because a lot of them are different. It'll be like, eat a gun for 20 coins or do this. If you don't want to do that, you can send them back up and then it'll give you like a random thing. A lot of times I find I almost send up everybody because most of the time the risk of whatever they're offering is not as good as what you could potentially get.
Hmm.
Um, and I think once you take the item, they're just stuck there. So you can't do anything with them after that. So I usually just send them. As far as I can tell, they may obviously expand on that, but as far as it sits right now, it seems like that's just in service of it's I would look at it more as a recycle. mechanic
Okay.
than anything else. Is like, oh, I don't need this. Let me recycle it for something rather than having it wasted completely. Which
And
I think
that was another thing like about the game, like the I think the currency, like because you want to balance currency, so you don't want to buy every item, and that is a good like way of getting around that is sending people back. Because I didn't
Mhm.
realize like the reward you get for doing that is completely random.
Yeah, yeah, it's random. Most of the time, I find it is some kind of money, but it can be like ammo, or I've had weapons drop from it before and stuff like that. So it's just like
Mm.
just another random whatever.
But
But
yeah,
yeah, just
that's
I think it's mostly in place to just get something out of it. But
that was the one game I was playing. But yeah, what do you got going on?
I mean, I mean, if you've been following the channel, you'll know. I mean, I've pretty much been playing Grounded almost
Hmm.
exclusively, or at least the most out of everything else. I've been playing a ton of that game. Which if you don't know what that is, it's Obsidian Entertainment's take on Honey I Shrunk the Kids, effectively. But it's basically like you're shrunk in the backyard and you're trying to find out why. It's in early access, so the game's not finished by any means, and there is still a ton of stuff to be added. But the interesting thing about this game that I found over time is that the amount of things people are finding is really something interesting, because it's just like there's things, because I think I put 70 some hours into it at this point and played pretty continually, or at least somewhat every single day. And every day on the forums or Reddit or whatever, there's always like something's like, "Hey, have you guys seen this thing?" And you're like, "No, where is that at?" "No, I haven't seen that." Like recently, I found somebody had posted. There's like in one of the bushes, there's like an orb that hangs down that overlooks the entire yard, and you have no idea what that does or why that's there. Which again, some of that stuff's not fleshed out in the game yet, obviously, because I think only 20% of the story is there at the moment. So some of that stuff I'm sure will get more narrative focused later, but it's still just that idea of like, oh, what is this thing? Oh wow, there's this. Oh, it does this. I wonder what that's going to be. And there's like a really heightened mystery to a game that feels very familiar because you're in a backyard and you're just dealing with bugs and stuff like that. But I will say too, I think, and this may change eventually, but I think one of my favorite, actually, this place that this character is in right now, this is like where you talk to the main character, and I didn't realize this until about 30 some hours in. But if you turn around, there's like a hole in the wall, and you can just go out of that building, and there's like a whole nother tunnel system. But the way that it looks is almost looks closed off, but you can just walk right through it. So it's just like a lot of hidden in plain sight kind of things, like you wouldn't notice. Or there's, the way that Bethesda tells stories, like what you just saw, is there's like other skeletons in the yard already of like kids, or there's like
Hmm.
large skeletons in there, and you're like, man, what is actually going on in this house? Is this even my house? Like it, or am I just here as some experiment? Like what's actually happening?
I was
And the
actually
game, I
happy
think,
about
yeah,
the story content that they're wanting to delve out because, yeah, this is made by Obsidian, the people who did what is arguably, in a lot of people's opinion, the best Fallout games, but also recently Outer Worlds.
yeah,
And like they released this, and it came out in early access pretty quickly after. But like, how do
yeah. I think it was
they?
a year lead time from when they announced it. I think it was E3 of 2019 is when they brought it up, and then it
Yeah,
came out the 28th of last month. So little over a year, a little less than a year ish.
But it
But
does
yeah,
feel like they're going to kind of try and capture that way of storytelling and the survival elements, and it's good to hear that there's like these kind of weird secrets in the world, kind of weird stuff going on there. One thing I do have a question on is like you
yeah,
see in the back, like in the like skybox, I guess you would say, you see a lot
mhm.
of like scenery in there, like the houses, the fences, the big tree. The big tree I know you can get to because that's pretty much where the story ends right now. But
Yeah. That's like the main base is under that. For the current state, the main base is there.
yeah, and the house, like have you ever just like tried to make a beeline and like see how like close you can get to the house or
Yeah,
anything
you
like
you can get
that?
on the front porch. I mean, the so around the game, there's going to be like a bunch of under construction signs, but you can walk right through them. Like it's just like a visible, or like a visible barrier, but it's not solid by any means. So you can just walk right through it. I think one of the next videos I'm going to put up is because I tried to see what was in the gutters of the house, and went up there, which I won't give away exactly what it is. It's not super exciting, I will say.
Yeah.
But yeah, the house specifically, from what I found, is hollow though. So like if you try to get on the roof, you just fall right through it. But it is in the world. You can get to the porch. I built if you guys have followed the I built what was it, shipment from Call of Duty. I built that on the front porch of the house, so that all is solid. There's also like a spider nest and some other stuff under the porch, and some other kind of scary stuff there. The way that, because it's really interesting too, the way that they've created different sort of zones in it, due to it being like there's like an area with a bunch of pesticides that's called the fog. Actually, you can see it right there. That section to the left.
Yeah, let me pull up
That's all the
the video
fog.
real quick.
So
There we go.
that's all pesticides and stuff. And so that's like there's diseased bugs and stuff in there, which makes it interesting. So it's like variants of regular bugs that are like there's like a mite that normally like will jump on you, but this one will jump on you, and it also shoots like a poison dart kind of thing at you. There's like fungal weevils that will run at you and explode, whereas the normal ones don't even bother you at all. So they've already got like a good section there, and then I believe the next update, I think that's scheduled for the 27th. They haven't verified specifically what it is, but the big talk is that they're going to open up the pond and add koi fish and leeches and stuff like that. Because there's nothing in it, but they have like underwater spiders that people found out of the game, water striders, I think boat fish, which is another insect that looks kind of strange. Um, yeah, so again, just again, a lot of mystery stuff, a lot of expanding, a lot of just like hidden little treats and stuff around the yard to find. And it's crazy again, like how many things. Like there was a room the community found recently that was like a bunch of ant head effigies in a room with like a some kind of almost like sculpture put on the wall, all made out of ant parts and like a human skeleton, but like a
Okay.
miniaturized skeleton or whatever. And then there was a
Yeah.
bag in that room with like some supplies and another kid's skeleton. So it's almost like to imply like someone went nuts in this yard, like living here. So it's really, again, it's the thing about this game too that I think is so captivating is it's like it's hard to make emotion out of a game, especially when there's no like real dialogue and stuff. This game has like an incredible ability of being like like a really inviting joyride during the day and like one of the most terrifying experiences at night. Like, and it has this very heavy like tonal shift almost. Like, not that things are safe during the day really, but it's like bright and colorful and joyous, and then it's just dark and you can't really see much. And the only thing that really you will see is like a bit of shuffling in the distance and then just bright red eyes that it's like, oh, there's a fucking spider that's like 5 times the size of my body and it'll kill me in 2 hits if it sees me.
Yeah.
And so it's like yeah, like it's like a colorful joyride during the day and a horror game at night, and it's really crazy that shift. But it all feels tonally like it fits really well because even though like the character is kind of goofy and stuff, or at least Burgle, the one character that's really in there at the moment, he's kind of goofy, and then the audio logs are kind of goofy of like whoever the main scientist is. That most people have just been calling Dad, even though again we have no idea if that's actually our father or just a scientist that created all this technology or whatever. But yeah, it's super interesting. Like I think it's one of those games where like it's definitely not polished yet, but I would say get in sooner rather than later. Because something about like following the mystery of everything that's sort of coming into the game and sort of finding all this stuff may get washed away. It's sort of like not to get back on Fallout 76 by any means, but in that game before they added NPCs, it was like completely empty and it really felt like your wasteland and you were the first person out of the vault and there was no survivors and it was like very barren and it's like you felt the mood of the game shifted when people showed up. It was very different, I think overall. So I would say with this one, it's another one where I would get in ahead of time, especially because we have Game Pass. It's free, so there's really no harm in you doing it. And yeah, I don't know. I think I hope that they have the ability to retain all this mystery as it goes forward, and they flesh out the yard completely. And speaking of the house, they did mention in their interview today that they have definitely talked about it, but they're not confirming whether or not you actually go into the house. Which is I feel like we probably will get some part of that house at some point. But who knows? It's not necessarily needed, but it would be. I think everyone would be pretty psyched to just go in there and see what it is.
Hmm. Yeah.
Especially since it's been there since day one and will continue to be there, where everyone's just super curious as what is in the house.
I think it's interesting that people, because you're not the first person I've seen like kind of, well, you're more talking about 76 than actually like full blown like making it like a point that this game is like easily compared to it. But I don't think
Mhm.
it's like a huge stretch to say that this game is like not trying to like ape that at all, but maybe like the timing is maybe just right to, because they've kind of done it twice now. Like, oh, you don't want us to make a Fallout game? We'll make Outer Worlds. Well, Fallout 76 is kind of, sputtering here and there. It's good now, but like they still make weird decisions that like drive the community apart in fun ways. Let's get in there and try to make something like kind of similar in a way. Do you think that
Uh,
that's intentional or?
no, I don't think so. I don't think I don't really think that they're that similar. I think more in the feeling of the area and maybe the surrounding feeling of isolation is maybe more of what is similar, not so much the game itself. Like, yeah, there's building mechanics and stuff like that, but that game is more specifically like I wouldn't say massively multiplayer because 25 people I wouldn't consider massive to a server, but this one is only like 4 people. They're all tied to your save, so like you can't. So it's all peer to peer stuff. So at the moment, like there's no dedicated servers or anything, so everybody's running off your game, and
Mhm.
so they don't bring their character in either. So like if somebody joined, like say you were to join my game, you would start. Say you put 30 hours into your game and then you join my game, you would start my game with a fresh character from my game. You wouldn't have anything you had in that game with you at all. So
Yeah.
it's still very solo based more or less. Like it still very much feels like it's balanced towards a single player experience.
Do you think that there is room for them to explore massively multiplayer servers in this game?
Yeah, they talked a little bit about that today because that was a thing that people kind of asked was like, what about dedicated servers? One thing because they've had some issues with that just because by virtue of what we talked about at the beginning, some people's internet's not very great and they have caps and all this other stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And by virtue of like if you started the game together, you still require that one friend to come in before you can get on that server again and do anything, and you can't get on without him there. So that's the that's the bummer is like even if you start a world together, you're still all time dependent. Like instead of like Minecraft where it's like, well, we're all on the same server, we can just do whatever when we want and then get out of there. But that's the thing that they talked about a little bit is just having the one that ability to go into the server at any time, and then two, opening it up maybe a little bit more to have more people into a server. And then on the forums and stuff, the community was talking more about like a PvP side of this, which I really don't think is necessary. But having the ability to maybe have like a Rust-ish kind of game mode would not be the worst thing. Like I could see the potential in that as well. Like not that that's necessarily why I'm coming to it. Because what I was going to say earlier is I find this game I think really refreshing by virtue of there not being humanoid things you're killing. It's like it is all very much insect, and that is your enemy or your friend, more or less, depending. And Also in like Fallout 2, there's not really a class system either. That was something that was I well, I don't know actually because the question I asked that too was a fake account now, so I don't know. But the I did try to get some information on that, but obviously that is moot now. But as far as I know, they haven't said anything about any of the characters being classes or anything. There's no like experience in the game. There's no class system. Everybody can do everything that anybody else can as it sits.
Hmm.
The only thing that makes me wonder about that a little bit is the quests are labeled with different headers. It'll be like this is an alchemist quest, or this is this, or this is this. The reward is the same for all of them. It's just the research science or whatever. So I don't know if that's going to either maybe tie in narratively, like this is a quest for the alchemist, which is maybe an NPC that shows up later or something like that. So yeah, I think it's different. The game, honestly, that people compare this to the most has been Ark. Like I've seen a lot of people from
Yeah.
Ark come over to this game, and then a lot of people in the community compare it to that game a ton. And I don't really see that one.
Well,
But
most recently, I played the Forest, like of all the survival, like 3D, like open
I
world
find that
survival
game to be
games.
the most similar to this one, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
yeah, and that's kind of the vibe I got when I was playing this is that I I think what they're doing as far as like the world and making it like a little bit more friendly and good natured is really cool. But I liked that slow trickle of like weird story stuff in the forest, and like
Mhm.
in this game you get there and then like 25% of the way, or like, hey, this is 20% of the story. It's like, it takes the wind under the sails just a little bit, but it's
Yeah.
understandable because it's early access.
Well, yeah,
Um,
but I will say that is exactly how the forest went, though. So I don't know when
yeah.
you started the
Oh, this
forest.
I played years. Oh, like I bought it not too long ago. Like
Oh,
it
okay,
was
okay,
it was on the radar, but I had friends who were really into it, and then one day they were
yeah,
like, "Hey, we should all just play this game." So I was like, "Okay, whatever."
gotcha. Okay, yeah.
Um,
So I'll say having bought that game also like the day it released in early access. That game didn't really have a story at all to begin with. The only thing that happened is you crash the plane and then you're just in the forest, and that's it.
okay.
So then they trickled in story throughout, but it was that same feeling of this game where like, oh, what is this weird thing in this cave? Oh, what is this facility that's just here for no reason? And there was nothing to it, but it was just there. And that's why I think I compare these games a lot, and why I think it's better to get in early on this one is the same thing. Is it's like uncovering all this mysterious stuff is really interesting, and you're like, and it's just that mystery of like, I wonder what this is going to end up being, and then getting that clarification later, or that getting fleshed out is, I think, exciting to be like, oh shit, this is what this was supposed to be, or this is what this has been. And
That's
again,
what I
I
like
understand
about.
everyone doesn't want to play the game that way,
Mhm.
but I think with this too is that's sort of where you're getting more of the story, because the quests, like after you do the technical story content that is like the few missions of then talking to him, but you get another like 50 to 60 quests ish. Just like you can only get 3 per day, so you get like a cycle of having 3 at a time, but they send you all over the yard everywhere, and a lot of that stuff makes you see these things that you can't interact with yet, but it gives you this idea of like this like mental map, and then on the actual map it'll be like, hey, here's this mint container, here's this hedge lab, here's this, like it'll show you all these things that you're like can't quite get to yet, but that means that something later will allow you to get to it. And there's also like the labs themselves seem to connect all in some way. Like there's doors and stuff in all of them that don't open, so it seems like there's that might be the means of fast travel, is being able to go through these tunnels to get to there.
Mhm.
Um, there's also one that looks like they experiment on like the berries that are in the garden, and there's like a lab that does that, but you can't. Again, there's no context to it, but it's that, again, just that overall idea of like, what is the intended purpose of any of this happening to us? Why were we picked? Why was this that? Why is this here? Why does this seem like such a large scale miniature experiment that's going on? Why this yard? Just there's just so much. And like the forest, it was that same thing. It's just like, why did we crash here? Where is my son? Is he alive? Did they take him? Why did they take him? Why are all these savages here? Why were there other people here? It seems like there were, because there's abandoned ships and other stuff. Why are all these things like super mutated and weird? Like it's that same. Yeah, like I said, I would compare, if nothing else, that would be the game I would compare this to
Yeah.
almost 100%. As they feel very similar, and I honestly I like this game better. I think by virtue of the um, I think just because it's based more in reality in a weird way, and just because that you're familiar with everything that happens, and I think that tonal shift of like, everything being so familiar and now so distinctly different. It's like if your dad came out to the mow the grass, that's the end of your fucking world, which is crazy to think of. But that's a huge
Yeah.
world event where it's like it's that idea of that we kind of touched on a little bit last week of like, hey, you're the hero, you're the only hero, you're not, or whatever. But in this case, you really are, and the world itself is gigantic, but only to you, as the rest of the world is very tiny in your scope. But it's not that the world's ending kind of vibe or whatever. It seems very localized, which I think is, but you still have the ability for these grandiose events in this tiny world that you're in. And I think that's a lot of the allure, is just how interesting that ends up being,
Yeah.
and what and the speculation of what is to come and what they can do with it. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
I
I'll
highly
check it.
recommend it though. I absolutely love it.
I'll check it out like single player. I know that like for games like this, I typically want to play them like in a and don't mind any if you see any special guests in the background.
Yeah,
Um
yeah, it's fine.
I fuck, what was I saying?
Games
Oh my
like this you
god.
like to play,
I lost my whole train of thought. I just
buddy boy. Well, I only talked for
um
15 minutes straight, so it's no big deal. It's no big whoop.
I'm just trying to catch the thread of what in the hell I was saying. Oh
Yeah.
my god. How embarrassing.
We're talking about this games like The Forest, like checking it out, solo play.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. So I find
Yeah,
like, and we can cut all that out if you want. I find the nature of like these types of games. I'm not big on survival type like in that genre. Like I'm just
mhm,
really not that interested in it. But there is something about this game that like drove me to it. But if
yeah,
I want to play a game like this, I primarily want to play with friends. And I think that that
sure,
was one thing that turned me off a little bit with some of the stability stuff. But then I remember it's early access, you know, the stuff will get ironed out. I don't want to be too harsh on the game for that. But as
yeah.
far as my play style and the way I'll probably play it is I'll definitely wait for like the multiplayer to be a little bit more fleshed out and ironed out.
I will say
Um
we personally, because Justin and Ethan picked it up as well, and we played 3 or 4 different times. We didn't have any stability issues whatsoever.
we had some
Um,
problems where like the we would go to sleep or save and somebody's game would crash and we would like okay well, all right, let's quit real quick, come back, and whoever was
right.
hosting the game, it would roll back like a very significant amount of time versus where we
Oh,
were
interesting.
sleeping. And I think it's because of that auto, because when you go to sleep in this game, much like the forest, it will save the game.
Did
I think there
they
are.
try, because there is a timer autosave option, and
We
you
did
can
have
set it
that.
to a certain amount of time, so I'm wondering if because if you go to the most recent one, that may be the rolled back one, but if you went to pick the save, it might be,
Hmm.
closer to when you crashed rather than farther back. I'm not sure, though, because like I said, I mean, I've primarily played it solo, so I don't know necessarily how that all
Yeah,
transpires.
because I've seen your videos and stuff, and like the building and all that stuff. That's what I find the most fascinating, and you've done like some fucking awesome shit that I want to definitely dive into. Much like you have in
I just want more
76, but
parts. That's really all
yeah,
that it is. I want more pieces because
I think it'll
I'm
get
a little
there.
limited. Oh
I
yeah,
think
for
it'll get
sure.
there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, go check that game out if you're interested in the survival type stuff.
Yeah,
Just have an open mind. It's early access. You're not going to have the whole 9 yards right in front of you.
yeah.
So.
Well, and I will say too, that's another thing. Probably the last thing, but like, um, this is Xbox first early access game, so there, a lot of them you'll notice are just not familiar with what that looks like.
Hmm.
So that's like a lot of criticism comes from that community. So try not to take that like too harshly if you're planning on getting into it because they're not familiar with how this works. Whereas if you played games on PC, you've been familiar with this for the last decade, and
Yeah.
it's just the way that early access is. And some people love it, and some people can't stand it. I personally love getting in on the ground floor of games if I like the concept enough, and this one is no different. So yeah, I'd say check it out. Like I said, if you have Game Pass on PC or Xbox, it's free. And then if not, it's $30 on Steam. So, but I think worth it for the future because I imagine it'll get more expensive when they release it
Hmm.
outright. But they haven't said either way, so I can't say. But I assume it will because it seems like with what content's there and what they're going to add, they'll probably charge a little bit more. But
Yeah.
um, other than that, and I'll just touch on quickly Skater XL, which I've been playing since early access as well. Another good example, and that's been out for about a week now. I was going to mention it last week, but I'd forgotten about it. And
Does it
as far as
scratch
this,
the skate itch? Does it like if you wanted to play skate?
well, it depends on what you wanted out of Skate.
Okay.
So there is no challenging, there's no missions, there's no point system, there's no scoring, there's nothing like that. It is very literally just skateboarding.
A
Um,
sandbox essentially to
yes,
skateboard. Okay.
yeah. And so it's like if you like I always like I equate it to I skateboarded for about 10 years when I was growing up, and it is the most skateboarding game I think out there. Like it feels um so much like skateboarding, like actually does, like just that idea of getting outside and going to skate and just like trying the same trick or different tricks on the same spot over and over again, and all that. It does an incredible job of feeling like you're out there skateboarding. Um, I have a review up on mine if you want to just pull that up because it doesn't have
Yeah.
my face in it, um, but yeah, so yeah, it's good for that. I think a lot of people were bummed because it didn't have all this challenge mode and all this other stuff in it. That being said, they never promised that or said they were going to do that. So there is a challenge mode in it, but it's mostly just like follow this guy to do this trick over this gap, you know, and this thing, and they're all for each level that they have.
Does it have
Um,
like the multiplayer? Because recently you turned me
no,
on to that
no,
that Thug 2 Pro
yeah, yeah,
that they have online, and I messed with that too, and it's kind of the same thing. There is a scoring system, but with that, it's just really kind of just tricking around a map with your friends.
yeah, sure.
And
And
but
there's not so there's not multiplayer in this. There is a multiplayer mod to this game that people have made that seems to work pretty well. That's like
mhm,
rather stable. And they've definitely talked about implementing that into the game. So the thing about this game, I will say that is like a super benefit and maybe a caveat to each person individually, especially if you're playing this on console because you don't have this option whatsoever. Um, but the PC community, especially, they've been super good with the mod community to the point of where I think they even hired two of the modders for the community into their main team just to help build maps and other stuff because they recognize people doing good work on the mod
mhm,
side and just were like, hey, let's bring them in. Because the game for up until now for the 2 years it was out technically only had this level that you're seeing right now in the game. This was the only level that was in there. So it was just skating in this map for that basically year and a half, 2 year period, with the exception of being able to download mod maps from the community, which there was hundreds and hundreds of them. And then same with like there's a replay editor in the game, which that came from the mod community as well. There's I think 3 maps in the final release that were all mod made that came into the map. I think also the people that they got hired on their maps were the ones that got put in. Um, and then same with items and character customization and stuff like that. A lot of that was all from the mod community, and they implemented a lot of that stuff into the game itself proper. But but I think that is a lot of where the fun is for this game is like finding those one, if you just like skateboarding and you want a game that feels like skating does, then
yeah.
this is the game. Especially compared to the only other option we have on PC at the moment, really is Sessions, and I personally find that game terrible. It feels terrible to me to play. They I think took the route of trying to make it more as realistic as possible, but by virtue of that, taking most of the enjoyment out of it. Whereas this just feels like you're a capable skateboarder already, but this is the stuff you would do if you had the ability in real life or whatever. And so it's
Mhm.
not like that overtly fantasy Tony Hawk style. It's not that point trick gap thing that skate is, and it's definitely not the hyper realism that Sessions is. So again, to me, it just like I said, I can't. It's hard to tell without actually playing it, but I can't really express it better than it's just. It feels as much like skateboarding as skateboarding can.
It's one of those
Um,
like cathartic game experiences where
it's comfort food because
yeah.
this is a game I've played for 60 some hours already, especially I mean through the early access and all that. But I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I want to listen to a podcast, but I don't want to just sit here. Well, here we go. And I'll just sit and skate for hours or so at a time. And it feels great for that. And especially as someone who doesn't skateboard anymore in real life, but still obviously likes it and follows it. It's great for that. I remember I put this in the review, but there was specifically someone on Steam that had mentioned like they lost their legs at some point, so they couldn't skateboard anymore. And then I think they had like over 1,000 hours in this game or something like that. But it was just like, man, this is what it feels. You know,
Yeah. That's
I'm,
cool.
I'm paraphrasing obviously, um,
Well,
but
I
yeah,
hear like from people who are really into skate, I think it's like the first skate that people talk about the most, right? Where that was like the most fresh experience. They were kind of trying to do a more grounded experience with the first game, and then I
yeah,
think the second one they tried to have their cake and eat it too with like some of the like a little bit like the control scheme was the same, but I think that they went with a more arcadey approach, if that makes sense. Like
yeah.
that's a
Well, and then they
complaint I
started
hear.
doing like that Hall of Meat stuff and which is fine. I mean, obviously they want to expand on the game more and more, but yeah, I don't know. I think it just added a lot of stuff that I mean, there's nothing wrong with Skate, obviously. I think those are both solid those are all solid games in general. But yeah, it was that they took the more they tried to take a more realistic approach, but then like I said with Sessions, I think that's the issue is they took the more realistic approach, but they took the fun out of it. Where I don't think Skate took the fun out of it by any means. I think that was still
Mm-hmm.
very much present. And then in this, it's again that it is just fun. Like there's no pressure or or anything to do well. It's all your own goal. And I obviously understand that that's not for everybody. When they play a
Yeah.
game, they want a game, and that's just not here. So it's just um, it is more just make your own fun. And again, if you've been really into skateboarding and enjoyed skateboarding in real life, I think this game makes way more sense from that side because it's like, it's like, oh, I remember finding like a 5 stair, and I wanted to do a kickflip down it, and it took a while, but I learned it, and then I was like, oh, I want to do this down it, and then it's just that idea of just going to one spot and just trying to do a trick there, and then eventually turning that into doing a line there, and then doing all this stuff, and it's all that. I mean, it's really, if anything, the goal is to make a good replay to show people what you've done, because that's sort of what skateboarding is, more or less, is making a good reel and showing that. So yeah, it like I said, it's not, there's no unlocks, there's none of that shit. It's just
Pure
skateboarding, and
skating.
it's pure its form, and I
Yeah.
think it's great for that.
Do you get chased
So
by security guards or like mall cops if you like
no,
get too close to the doors?
it's not
Do-
Thrasher, the PlayStation 1 game. No,
Fuck. Fuck.
that have you ever played that game?
No, but wasn't that a Rockstar game?
It
I'm like,
was, yeah.
yeah, like I
So
know that
that
it was a skating game with Tude.
yeah.
Um,
So uh
hey,
in
I'm
the
gonna
end
pull up
of
some
that,
video of it. Keep talking.
yeah. So when you end your run in that game, a police officer, you would get into the first person of a police officer with a taser and chase your character. So it'd be like it'd be, I think, technically a not 2D game, but second person game, because it would be your perspective is first person of the cop following you as the skateboarder behind it, which was really interesting. The game is
Okay.
kind of a game is tough, but it's, yeah. Here you go. Here
Here
you
it
go.
is.
This. So you're still skating away, but you're being chased by this guy who you're not controlling, but you are in their perspective. Um,
That's interesting, I guess. Was this
yeah, it's
before or after
interesting.
Tony Hawk?
This was after Tony Hawk. Yeah, this was like
Okay.
in the time where like Tony Hawk had already been great, and again, they took, I think, a more realistic approach because they had a more. I think you had to like queue up the trick
I
rather
love
than
these
do it in the air.
FMVs.
I can't remember. That's been a long time since I played that game, but I think it was when we had to like load up a trick instead of,
Yeah.
it'd be like hold square in this, and then you would jump, and it would do that trick rather than when you're in the air
Dude,
do a kickflip or whatever.
yeah, this game
But
has the GTA
Rockstar
like
characters,
Rockstar aesthetic art
yeah,
UI. I knew about this game by like just virtue of like word of mouth and like hearing about like skating
sure,
games over the years.
yeah.
I man. Well, I guess
Uh,
Scope, would you recommend Thrasher over Skater XL?
fuck no, no. I mean, I would say if you're into skateboarding, you should try Thrasher at some point just to see the history lesson. But no, I mean, as far as like an actual game, Skater XL is much more enjoyable,
Hell yeah.
and less tense because you're not getting chased by a taser at some point. So there's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, today's political climate, I don't think you necessarily want to be in a
You
position of
definitely
tasing
don't.
anybody. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
So,
don't think that would have been put into this game either at that point. I don't think that would be a part of it. Also, look at your size comparison to that train right there.
okay, hold on. Let me pull the video back up on the feed.
Do you see
The
how far?
train,
Here, you
let
gotta
me
go
back it
back
up. Let
just
me
a
back
little
it up.
bit. But yeah, look at how big you are. You're taller than a fucking train is. Let's see, it's coming. Yeah,
Oh, hell yeah.
yeah,
And
dude.
you're
I mean,
crouched too. What a giant.
that's a mammoth of a man.
This
No
is
wonder he's having such trouble on this skateboard.
all right, enough of this.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on. Um,
Do you have any
I'll
other
quick.
games you wanted to talk about right quick?
I'll quickly say I've been playing Pop Up Dungeon, which
Yeah.
I put a review up that's like 35 minutes long because there's a lot in that game.
I saw
Um,
it's like a from what I gather because I watched a little bit of your video, it's like you get this kind of loot box thing with a bunch of different game pawns in it, and there's like different board games that people have like handcrafted along with models, and it looks like there's like a
yeah,
kind of a card battler system in there as well.
Yeah. So more or less. So it's basically like you have a team of, I think you can do it solo, but it's like a team of 1 to 5 maybe, that you can bring into an area, and it's all done in this like papercraft perspective, and then every character has their own abilities and stuff. That being said, you can like this Mega Man character that was made by the community or whatever, same with these Ninja Turtles and all that. So you can make character. The game is really based around the creativity side of it. Like you can make all these characters, make all their abilities, put in art. Like as you can see, all that Team Fortress stuff obviously wasn't in the game already. Same with like the Ninja Turtles ones. They did that one. They did a really exceptional job. Whoever made that. But it is a roguelike mostly. Um, there is like a run side of it, and then there's a campaign, which I'm still working through the campaign, and I think it's pretty good so far. It's like narratively speaking, it's really uh it's like playful mostly. It's not like super serious.
Yeah.
The game itself is in development for about 7 years or so the dialogue stuff is a little dated at times, just by virtue of it being in development for so long.
Would you put it
Although,
in the same category as like a Darkest Dungeon or like a
no,
like Desktop
no,
Dungeon or anything like that?
no. I'm not as familiar with desktop. Darkest though, no, it's definitely not as excruciating as that game by any means.
Okay.
It's more of, so like if you see this screen here, this is basically how the story stuff will happen as well. So it'd be like, it'll say here, it'll be like a character thing. It'll be like, this is their next thing. This is their dialogue. You have like dialogue choices for that. Then it'll move to the next pan, and it'll be like, here's something that comes up. Roll the dice for. It'll give you like 3 options, and it'll be like, pick this one, and this one it requires you to roll a 5 or more or whatever on that. You'll pass that, and then so it's very D&D inspired, I think overall. Um, the run stuff is more of a traditional roguelike that's just like pretty random all over the place, but the story is more constructed. And you're trying to like find this wizard, which is like an emoji kind of thing that is guiding you through this thing that you think is evil, but he seems like he's your buddy at a point. It's really weird. It's really out there because it's like I saw some screenshots too. At some point, you fight like Godzilla. At some point, the last mission I had was to go into a blue lobster, which was like a red lobster, but I had to eat X amount of biscuits before the waitress. I had to eat 9 free biscuits before the waitress got pissed off enough to kick us out. So I had to basically fill my stomach without ordering anything or spending any money because they don't take gold at this fantasy blue lobster or whatever it is. Um, so
And
it's like it's
that's the
playful. It's
main
like it's cool.
campaign. That
Yeah,
like
that's the main story. Yeah,
okay.
that's like mission 3, I think it was, or 2 or 3 or something like that.
Oh, I like
Um,
this. I like this a lot.
so it's really neat. The issues come in with the actual combat though, I think. And it's
Yeah.
like it's
Let's
not
skip
to say it's
forward a little
bad, it's
bit,
just
yeah.
the
So
way
it's got an
everything is.
XCOM thing going on.
Yes, so it's a turn-based tactics game, but your abilities are all tied to cards. And I think they did that primarily so that when you create new abilities, it's easier to do that because it's like, oh, you just make a card with this, and then this is what moveset it does, and all this stuff. So I think that was all for the creation side of the thing, which I think is where my main crux of this game comes in. Is like in most tactics games, you want that immediate visual feedback or understanding of what's happening. You're like, oh, that guy, like in Fire Emblem, for example, it's like one, they have that weapon triangle, so you sort of know already what's better than what, and then you can sort of see it from a distance. Like clearly, that guy's on a horse. I know what is strong against horses, this
Mhm.
and that. And then even the same thing with card games, where it's like, say you're like Hearthstone or whatever. It's like, oh, all the warrior cards are red. I know that by looking at them. All the ability cards, do X amount or whatever. Like the visual trappings are all very obvious in this game by virtue of the fact that every character can or everybody can make their own cards, and because everything is so random in the game, there's like 50 some odd characters, and I think that's the biggest issue with the roguelike side of it is that it seems like every character, even though they have like a set type of ability, all of their traits and stuff seem randomized. So you really don't have any idea what you're going against. So you can't really even make a party. You can make a party that synergizes well with itself, but you can't necessarily make one that's going to synergize well against whatever you're going up against.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, when you with the visual thing is like, so that dog character I have, the corgi there, he's like a tank healer thing, but he has a card that's like bright red, And to me, I was like, oh, that's a damage ability. It's red. Obviously, it's a damage. But what that is like a debuff, cleanser, and heal. But you can do it to an enemy. So my first like 3 times I used it, I was just hitting an enemy with it. Not, and that's up to me for not reading it. But again, visually, you look at it and you go, oh, red, probably damage. You go green,
Yeah.
oh, probably poison or healing or something like that. But then when you get into the custom made stuff, it's like all Mega Man's cards are blue, so you have to read every single one of them to see what they do, which is fine, but it's still like that. It takes the flow of the game down a notch or two, and then in addition to that, the all the enemies, the numbers behind all this stuff, I don't think make a lot of sense because it'll be like, so your character will have like plus 49 defense. That'll be good defense. It'll say next to it'll be like good defense plus 49, whatever. And then you'll look at the enemy and it'll go, it has phenomenal something defense, like spiritual defense or light defense. And that'll be like plus 690 or something. And you're like, man, that's a huge gap to put between the plus 40 I have.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know what the ceiling is or the scale of any of that. So like all the numbers seem very skewed. And then a lot of stuff will just be like, well, you have plus 20% in avoidance or plus 20% in focus, or this thing takes away 2% focus. But it's like, okay, but 2% of what total? And what does that mean in the grand scope of my total focus versus this thing I'm fighting's focus? And there's no like header above any creature or anything. Like the only
Yeah.
thing that's above it's like a health bar and then their move set. So you have to like right click on it to just see all of its stats, but there's like a huge listing of each individual stat. So the information is like okay, if you can
Yeah.
pause it on that screen that I just had. I don't know if you can go back for just a second.
Yeah.
But I brought up a character sheet for just a moment. It may
Yeah,
be
let's
harder
take
to
a
come
look.
by. You might be able to find another one too, because I know I brought one up a couple times, but maybe go farther in because I think the rest of the video I mostly just am playing this, so I feel like there
Oh, I
you go.
see, I
Any of
see.
those?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is not a great example because this is your actual character one, so they're a little easier to understand. But it'll be like charm defense. Like so on these lists on the top where like the cursor is, that right side will have like 6 things on it. That left side will have like another 7. Then if you go to the active effects at the bottom of the card, that'll have another like 2 or 3 or whatever is actually happening on the card at the moment. And then you have more statistics, strength, and weaknesses at the bottom of that as well. So those are just your defenses, strength, and weakness. And then that's your statistics, strength, and weakness. And so that's like individual per every single card.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, when you get into the custom game types, somebody has made that all individually on their own. So there's no easy readout of
Cohesion.
what is
Yeah.
happening or cohesion to any of it. So I think that's where the game starts to fall apart a little bit. I think the campaign itself is super solid. And I also think that the creation tools are there if you want to spend the time to make something really exciting. Like, again, that Ninja Turtle thing was super well put together. And it feels pretty balanced overall for what is there. But there's also times where I've just like went into a room and like 3 of my characters just got one shot immediately, and I have no idea why or by what, because you don't even see the encounter until you walk into the room. So you have no idea what is happening until you start to
Yeah.
place your characters. And so it's
So
yeah,
are
and then again you have
the
that like that's a kraken with a birthday hat. Like what is my visual read on what the fuck that thing's gonna do?
yeah,
Not that that's bad. It's just
are
you feel
the
very unprepared.
are the enemies also from downloaded workshop stuff, or are these like the because you're playing the campaign right now, so I imagine these
No,
are
no, no.
like they're
This
created.
is a run right now. So this is the roguelike version outside of the campaign. So
Okay,
there's like
okay.
there's multiple versions. There's like player created, and those can have multiple campaigns in them. Then there's the actual campaign. There's the runs that are the roguelike one. Then there's stories, which are each character's like campaign thing also. So there's again, there is a ton of stuff in this game. It's just I wish that it all meshed a little better, but by
Like they
virtue of
put
it
some
being so open,
rules like they put some rules around like the custom content. Like kind of like,
yeah.
hey, if you're going to make a damage card, it's kind of got to be color coded this specific way.
Yeah, or is something to be like, because then you go, well, the red was a heal for that character, but this one is red, and these are all fire attacks. So
Yeah.
like, what am I? There's no quick like representation. Everything needs you to read it until you know it, or if you made it yourself, you'll obviously know everything that it's doing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, okay, pause this one. So this is what I was saying. This was another weird one. So like, I had an ability that fire ability that I just used. So what it did was it cut the character's health in half, but it looked like because it was already half damaged, so it looked like it healed him. But if you look, its HP total is 29 out of 29 now, which is at 100%. So when I use the thing to cut his life in half, it doesn't show that the life got cut in half. It just shows his new total, which if I didn't see that beforehand, to me, it just looked like it just healed the thing. But
Yeah.
he's also weak to element and he's really strong to physical, but I killed it with a physical attack and only did like half damage with an elemental attack, which should be the reverse, I would think, depending upon, what the actual damage numbers of each card is or whatever. But it's just there's so much to go through on each card and each character and each thing. It's like pretty overwhelming, and especially that none of it's cohesive. So even if you learn it, it might be completely different the next time you go in. And again, for replayability, that's great if you're really enjoying what's happening. But yeah, I thought I was going to talk a lot faster about that game than I did, but it was a 40-minute review for that reason. There's just so much happening. And
Yeah.
the last thing I'll say too, and this is a total side note, if you do pick it up, whoever it is, there is a option to adjust game speed base level and a button to toggle fast forward. And I suggest you increase both of those because the game is also very slow moving if you don't do that. So
Nice.
that's another thing. But that's the last thing I'll say.
Yeah, pop-up
Um,
dungeon.
yeah,
Check that shit
I
out.
think
It
it's
looks good. I think if it so it's still in early access?
no, this is the final release.
Final
I
release.
plan
Okay.
I imagine they plan to continue to update it, I would think. But even if they don't, it's one of those games where the community, if it forms around it, probably will. Just
Yeah.
because of how expansive it is already. But yeah, that's that. I think the last thing I'll say about games this week is I played through the Dying Light Hell Raid DLC this morning. And that should tell you that because it was only an hour long, basically, which is upsetting because I think the last DLC, the following that they put out before that, was like a full map and quests and a whole nother storyline and all this. And I think that was either $10 or $20 maybe, and this is $10 for an hour. There's even an achievement in it to beat it in 30 minutes. Um, so I personally would say it's a pass. Like I don't think they add a lot to the game. They say they're going to keep updating this too, which maybe they will. I don't know exactly what they're
So
going to add.
a bit of background on this that I
Yeah,
understand is that this had been like announced as a standalone game from these folks, and like it never came to fruition, or it was in development hell, and they announced like a while ago that they had like completely gotten rid of it, but then or that they had scrapped the project, but then Techland like came out of nowhere. I think, when did this trailer come out? Because this dropped
maybe like
like,
2 months ago.
yeah,
Maybe
August.
two.
Well, this
Yeah,
one's the launch trailer, but this one, I remember seeing the trailers and people freaking out, like, oh, I remember when they showed this off.
yeah.
So who knows, like, why they decided to just bring it out of nowhere? But I think it is pretty cool that maybe they thought it was kind of a half baked product and they didn't want to do like a full game release on it, and they were like, well, people are still pining for it, so let's just kind of like give it this like in-engine like DLC spin-off, much like a Far Cry like Blood Dragon or something.
Yeah, and I think that would be fine. I will say they've like it's weird because they've had no real reason to continue to update this game, but they have been for however many years it's been out. I think maybe 6 years or so now.
Yeah, the
They put a
second one
lot of
should
free
be
DLC
out
out.
any
They still
day.
do events and stuff like that. And that's the other weird thing too is like the Dying Light 2 has still been pushed back a couple times. But yet they still have a full team, I think, working on this, or some kind of team is working on
Yeah.
updating this game continually, which is really strange.
And that
Um,
game isn't like a service game. It's not like a live service. Like it
well,
has a really
it became one, so I'm wondering if that will. It's not the same as other ones, but it is. For whatever reason, the community really swarmed around it and played it like it is a live service game. And they do like Easter events, which is like the last one I did like a couple months ago. And then I mean they update it like it is sort of, but there's not like the free to play currencies and all that stuff. They do have cosmetic things you can unlock and buy and that kind of thing. But it is weird how that game became what it became because I don't think it necessarily started out that way. It sort of
yeah.
was like a I'm trying to think of a game you could equate it to, but it did become this like sort of online co-op experience, maybe sort of similar to like Left 4 Dead if it had more RPG stuff in it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know, it's weird. And I think for this, it's just like it's too expensive. I'm sure they did work to it, but I feel like it should have been another free update rather than costing money because like I said, it's super short. It doesn't feel all that polished. Like it doesn't feel bad to play, but the skeletons feel really. The thing about that game is like the first person combat with the zombies. It always felt like there was a lot of weight to each hit and each movement of each um, zombie and stuff that you fought, and then cutting their heads and arms off and all this stuff. And then when you fight a skeleton, it's like it doesn't really react really to what you're doing, and there's no block in the game either. So like these all have swords and stuff, so it's just a bunch of dodging backwards and then trying to get its head off and then dodging backwards and doing that. So it's just like really, I don't know, it's just not great. For a game that is really good and by this time they didn't need to keep adding stuff to it. It's like awesome that they have been so supportive of the game. But at this point, this should have either been free or they should have just maybe not put anything out and waited to just give us the second one because that's I
Yeah.
think what everybody wants at this point. Um, yeah, it just seems like a waste of time more or less. And I know that it's not the best thing to say, but it just doesn't feel necessary. It's kind
I
of a
mean,
letdown.
power to the people who were looking forward to that. I mean, like looking at the reviews just now that I had pulled up, like I, you know, I always love reading shitty negative reviews on Steam, but there is something to say when
Mhm.
somebody can say, "Hey, this game when you showed it off years ago had like a completely different system, so this is like a shadow of what it should have been." But
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe they'll build on it. Maybe eventually, if there's like buzz around this one, they will see a value in spinning it off. But with Dying Light 2 being in like what seems development hell, it's like what you said. Like, what are their priorities at
Well,
Techland
they
right
had.
now?
I think the issue was they had a writer that had gotten into some hot water. Like one of
Mm.
the lead writers was involved in some kind of scandal of some sorts. I can't remember what it was. I imagine it was some kind of thing having to do with sex. I don't know if you ever had sex before, but people are super into it and they like to do bad things whenever sex is involved.
Yeah,
Um,
I actually remember this. It was Chris Avalone, who's like apparently one of the like biggest names in like RPG gaming.
yes, yeah, he's been
Um,
a writer on a lot of big stuff, but he was a lead writer on this game, and so it got pushed back because of this, because he got pulled off the project and out of life in general, I think.
yeah, I
For
think that
this.
happens these days. You don't hear from these people very often after all this shit happens.
Yeah, and that looked like that was posted June 23rd of this year, so that means
Yeah.
that, it was a recent thing, so that was another delay, and
I mean,
all
like
this.
looking at this development, like what they started back in like pretty much right when Dying Light 1 was finished. I remember like because
Yeah.
Techland
Well, there
had
was
like
supposed to be, um,
the Dead Rising
uh
game, right?
no, that's, not Dead Rising, Dead Island,
Dead Island,
2.
sorry. Yeah, that's
It was
right.
supposed to be that because they put out that really abysmal sequel to that game, Dead Island, something Tropic Thunder or
Riptide.
whatever. Where
Oh yeah,
Riptide, there
yeah.
we go. You're
There
on the
was also
beach.
the weird MOBA thing they tried to do.
Oh yeah, I played. I still have a beta key for that on my Steam account. Like it's just like a friend invite beta thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tried that for a while, which that game was fine, but it just didn't really need to exist, and it didn't take off for obvious reasons. And then Riptide was just a sham compared to how cool the first game was.
Yeah.
And then the second one seemed really, really promising and still does, I guess, if that ever happens. And then but again, Dying Light overall was a much better game than Dead Island anyway. It just felt way better. It was more interesting. The combat was more fluid. Everything about it was just more put together than that first game. And
Hmm.
then the ambitions they have with the second game were really exciting. And they have gameplay out that they updated not too long ago of it, and it still looks awesome. I'm ready to play it, but who knows at this point when we're going to see it, if we will.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Dying
we
Light
will, but I feel
Hellraid.
like it's going to be a bit.
Yeah. Dying Light Hellraid. Don't go play it. Apparently.
Don't I'd say don't worry about it. Wait for a sale, maybe. I'm sure you get enjoyment out
Yeah.
of it if it was like two. I would say like at $2. I think even 5 is too much. Like I said, there's literally achievement to beat it in half an hour. So that ought to tell you that the content there is like an hour and a half, maybe if you're taking it slowly. So yeah, not the greatest thing. But I saw on here, so you've been playing this boy?
Yeah, I've been playing I'm pulling up the donkey video because why not? But
Yeah.
yeah, Paper Mario. So I'm not way far into it. There's still plenty I need to get done, but I just did the first boss. I picked it up a while, like I think maybe a week after it had released. And I've been bouncing between a lot of different games. Like I had just finished Death Stranding. I was playing Ghost of Tsushima, which I think we'll get into a little bit more about Ghost of Tsushima next week.
Okay.
But I find this game like cozy in a way. I know a lot of
Mm,
people had like a lot of hangups about like where this series was going, especially from like Sticker Star and Color Splash. But the last like Paper Mario game I actually played was Super Paper Mario for the Wii, and
mhm.
that game had like pretty much already ditched a lot of like that moment by moment combat and more favor of like kind of a platformy experience.
Right.
Um, but the thing I like about this game is just like the amount of effort they put into like making the writing like memorable moment by moment, and
Mhm.
also just like making it clever and fun to be in this world. Um like all of the toads you talk to have really funny dialogue. Like moments like this in the game where there's just like musical and song and dance numbers that happen. um it has a tone without being overtly cheesy or like overtly goofy.
Yeah.
um but it's charming, it's very charming. I haven't gotten to the first companion yet, but I hear the bomb is like and I'll probably stop the video right here because this does contain some spoilers later on. Actually, I'll
Sure.
keep it going for a little bit. When he gets to some parts, it kind of gets into some weird territory. But like in this video, he just knocked the speaker off the tree, and that will stop the overworld music from playing.
Right. Right.
Um,
Right.
and there's just I don't know, neat stuff going on. Like the toad's like, "Hey Mario, thank you," and then he drifts away to what you might assume would be his death.
Right.
So the
I
tone
know.
is good.
I want to play it. I think I should have gotten this instead of the Horizon remake or
Yeah,
remaster. I think it should have been the choice I made because I do really want to play this game. And that's I mean, from what you said, that's what I've heard also is like just the writing is super clever and really
yeah.
engaging.
I
And
think the big thing though is like Patrick Klepek on Twitter was like, "Hey, I would love Paper Mario: The Origami King even more if it was a point and click adventure, because the combat, while it is fun at first, I can definitely see where it would start to get like, oh
like
fuck, here we
20
go."
hours of that is going to be a little
Yeah,
frustrating. Yeah.
yeah, but because it's a means to an end, it's not fun while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Because the combat is, if you haven't seen it, I think there might be a little bit of the combat somewhere in the video. Yeah, he's about to get into some of it. Um, but like the combat in the game is like you're in a ring, uh, the enemies and like are surrounding you, and then the end of or like are surrounding you, and then you kind of have to move the enemies around to get the
Well, you have to
like
adjust like
proper
the outer ring
lining.
and stuff, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just pull up a video that will show a little bit of the combat. So you have a hammer which does like a 4x4 or like a 2x2 like grid. So you group the enemies up there and you can hit them. You move the little circles around and you line them up to get like hop on them like in a straight line. Enemies like with the little anger symbol above their head, they will do more damage if you do not take care of them right away. So you kind of want to
Mm.
get them out of the way even if you don't kill them in like a first wave, because the other line of enemies will just do like basic damage. um but it's neat in ways like you can cheer on the toads, like you can like donate a bunch of money and like toads will like jump on the sidelines and like throw things at the enemies and do damage there. And
Oh, that's cute. Yeah.
it does reward you for completing the puzzles in like a clever way. So if you're able to group all the enemies at once, you get a bonus to your attack.
Mm,
And so it definitely does encourage you to like solve the puzzles rather than just like beat the enemies one at a time. Um,
sure.
and they
But
ditched a lot of the
do you
RPG
find
stuff.
yeah, that was the caveat I heard, but they've been kind of going that direction with the other ones
Yeah,
anyway, 'cause it seemed like the last couple I played were sort of like that.
yeah.
Um, do you find the puzzle side of it to be engaging at least, or
Mm,
is it just like too simple as it sits?
it's so there's moments where like, because there's a timer up on the top right if you see that.
Right.
As you're doing the combat, that timer will like continually tick down, and like they have There's ways you can unlock different means of extending that timer. Like you can hold start and pay coins to extend the timer. There's like some accessibility options when you unlock this building in like Toad Town that you can
Right.
use to like omit the timer in some cases. So for younger kids, I'd recommend doing that if they're playing this game
Well,
because
it's a
I think
literal transition of time is money, right? Like you just if you have
yeah,
a certain if you're rich as hell, you can just make that thing go as long as you want.
yeah, and
Okay.
so, but there are cool things happening with weapons in the game. So if you can see on the screen now, you buy different like weapons and items that you can use in the combat. There is
Right.
this weird durability stuff with it because they don't want you abusing like some of the more powerful stuff. So your
Right.
iron boots, you can use them, but they will start to get damaged over time. So then you kind of need to like come up with a different strategy or use a different weapon. And that's where I think some of the like if this were a pure RPG, they could have ditched some of the like durability stuff or some of that and just in favor of like using certain weapons with abilities and all that.
Sure,
Um,
yeah.
there are clever like bosses. Like the first boss you fight is a turtle, so you have to like go around the circle. The boss fights are completely different though. So right now on the screen you can see like the boss is in the middle, you're on the sideline, so you kind of had to run through these different points to end up getting on this symbol at the very end, which is this little punch symbol right there.
Yeah.
Uh, and you can collect buffs along the way. You can get random items. There's envelopes with like question marks on them that'll give you hints on how to beat the boss. Um, I there's a lot to it. It's simple enough to where like I mean a kid could fucking play the game, but I don't think
Yeah,
it's
when you're fucking kid.
necessarily I don't think it's necessarily engaging.
Right,
Uh,
okay. Yeah, that's
I
kind of the concern. That's like the hesitation I've had is I'm like, yeah, because it seems like I want to get into this world super bad because
mhm.
everything creatively around it seems super super neat and really up my alley.
Yeah. Well,
But
if I mean, you look at it, and the bosses are cool. Like, I
yeah,
think I think like say what you want about the combat, but like looking at like the boss design and even the enemy design to a point, but a lot of it is just kind of rinse and repeat.
yeah, yeah.
But I
Well,
think there's clever.
it brings up that same thing like when I played through BioShock Infinite. Like that's one of my favorite games and I love it. But I feel like the thing about it is like I just wanted that story, and the combat in it was just like, oh goddamn, do we really have to shoot
Yeah.
another 40 guys that don't really even make any sense that they're attacking me for whatever reason that they're attacking me?
Yeah.
And then I like again, not that the shooting's bad and not that the combat's bad or whatever, but it's just like there's so much of it, and it's just like just tell me what's going on. I want to know the story. I don't care so
And
much
that's what I
about
mean.
fighting these
Yeah,
bulls.
like everything is like it services like a means to an end. Like, oh, we can't just have you go through all these story beats. We got to have combat somewhere. Okay, what
Yeah,
haven't we done? Let's try to make something original. And I don't think it necessarily falls on its face. Like it's fine. It's fine. I just
yeah,
don't know if the combat is something I want to do for like 40 plus hours.
yeah. I'd be
That's
interesting
really
to
what
hear
it comes down
if
to.
it expands and opens up a bit more, but yeah, because I will pick up eventually, but I think it's gonna be a
Hmm.
bit before I actually get into it.
I do
Now, if
like
we're
in the
talking about a
world.
game.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
just because I saw him up there, but Yakuza is a game that handles combat outside the story really well because you'll just be
Oh
walking
yeah.
around and somebody's like, "Hey man, fuck you," and you're like, "What's that about?" He's like, "You're Yakuza," and you're like, "No," and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, fuck you, I'm gonna fight you in the street right now," and you're like, "Ah, fine." You whoop everybody's ass for a couple seconds, and then dude, Yakuza is great. I actually started playing through the first one, or
Yeah.
Yakuza Zero, I guess the first one.
I
Um,
got up till about this point when you play as the second character you unlock. I need to get back
oh,
into it. I was
Majima.
playing it on I was playing it on PS4. I forget most everything about it, but I recently downloaded it on Game Pass on PC. Everybody go pick up Game Pass. Microsoft pays me when I say it. So,
Yeah, they pay
um
both of us because we all
yeah.
talk about Game Pass so damn much, but it's such
uh
a good service, man, it's hard to not discuss.
yeah. Let's get Yakuza off. I could watch this forever.
Yeah, dude, Yakuza's fucking great, guys. If you haven't played any of these games, they're fantastic RPG games, and they're
Yeah.
so just quirky and interesting, but they have so much heart to them too because the main character, at least in the story parts that I'm at, he may become a complete asshole later on, I don't know, but from where I sit, he's, like, very about his morals and also just, super tough. He's, like, the strongest guy, but everyone thinks they can fight him,
I love
and they
like the
can't.
gorilla stance almost that you take, like the yellow stance in the game,
Oh,
and like I
brawler
think
stance, I
yeah,
think it is.
brawler, like you're just you have like this the Hulk stance, and you're just
Well,
like
it's just
literally
that like
grabbing benches.
yeah, picking up bicycles and throwing them at people and slamming their heads into
Yeah.
little god
Real
road
quick,
cones and
real
shit. That
quick.
game is
Back to
great, man.
just back
Sorry,
to
yeah.
Paper Mario, real quick. I'd say I'll let you know when I finish it, because I will finish it. I think it's charming enough, and I like the story, so I want to see like where it all ends. And
Do you have any idea how long it is? I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just curious. Do you know how long that game is by chance?
I think it's like a maybe 25-30 hour game,
Oh,
something
okay,
like
fair enough.
that. I mean, I could pull up the how long to beat real quick and just see.
I didn't know if you wanted to know. I was gonna look it up, but I didn't know if you wanted to know because sometimes that bothers
Honestly,
me.
I actually like knowing, especially like
Okay.
whenever I'm like trying to budget my around
Oh,
30
30
hours.
hours.
Yeah,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
says around 30 hours. So because these days, you know, in our fun climate that we're living in, I like to budget my time out with games, especially because there's so many fucking games, dude. So
Yeah,
many
I know,
fucking
dog.
games.
And there's
Um,
even more every day, and there's gonna
yeah,
continue to be more every day until the end of time,
and
because
I swear to
games
God,
don't stop, just like
it's
at GameStop, where games don't stop.
games don't stop at GameStop. Dude, you should be on their board of directors. They'd already have like their stocks in the right place with a
Dude, I don't
model
want to
like
work for
that.
that company. They're going out the
Yeah.
door, dog.
See
They're
ya.
we're about to be there's about to be no place to stop for games here soon.
Fuck. And I do like the GameStop experience. It reminds me of going to Blockbuster as a
Well,
kid in a
I
way.
used to.
Yeah,
Before
yeah,
every time you went in, they were like trying to get a kidney out of you, and then if they could get your social, just a couple numbers, not all of it, but we just need a few numbers of your social
yeah.
because that we're gonna sell part of it overseas.
I'm
And
not
then
gonna
if you
lie to
wanted
you.
damage
I'm
protection on your kidney that we just bought, what? You wanted? Hey, you like fucking magazines, dog? You want Game Informer?
You want Game Informer, dude? We got you on Game
Do you
Informer.
know they also just recently took away the discount as well? So like when you're a Power Up Rewards member, you don't get any discount on pre-owned games anymore.
So yeah, and I was gonna say that I
And it's
recently
still
actually
fucking $20. Sorry, I
they
don't know if you know. I just
they suckered me into re-upping on that thing recently, but they have a new program now where like I think every month they give you like a $5, $10 credit or something like that.
for 24 hours only. You gotta go in that day that coupon comes out and get something, or else you're done.
I will say
No, I don't
the
know. I don't know.
reason I got into that whole debacle with their membership is because of the savings on like used games and stuff like that. But that's because I like going in there and digging through the garbage bin and being like, "Oh fuck, this game's only like $20 and I could use it in my collection, whatever."
Yeah,
I picked up fucking Ukulele, the second game they made on the Switch, the Impossible Lair. I picked that up for like $7 at a fucking GameStop, dude. So, you know,
I will tell you this. I picked that up for free on the Epic store. Just, I mean, not that it matters. I'm just saying it was free on Epic for a bit. Actually, speaking of that, I'll throw this in here. It's not gonna matter when this comes out tomorrow, but what is it? Total War Troy, the newest game, is also free on Epic at the moment, today only for 24 hours. If you're a fan of Total War, although again, by this time tomorrow, it will not matter when this episode goes up. But if you
yeah,
got a hold of it, you got a hold of it. Oh, they also just because I segued poorly. Remnant is also free, which is a fantastic game. If you've
yeah,
not played Remnant, that's free
fantastic.
and coming about a week or two. Actually, it's free until August 20th, and I believe the 22nd is when the final expansion comes out, which I believe is $10. Which I'll update you on that because I am a huge fan of that game. And then Alto Collection, which is about a llama running through stuff. If I remember, I haven't played this game in a long time. I think it used to be a phone game. But anyway, that's totally besides the subject.
Yeah.
GameStop sucks. I was just gonna say, I was just saying, you can get free stuff on Epic. Everybody knows that. Not to
So
promote that, but
I think you might agree, but we might go take a little break, and we got plenty to talk about Epic when we get back. We got
I was gonna
plenty to
say,
talk
yeah,
about.
that's a good segue for it. But yeah, you're right. We should take a little breather.
All right, guys, we'll be right back. Fuck off, OBS. Okay.
I get it. I've had similar dialogue. I understand.
This is all in there. This is all in there. All
All
right.
right, cool. I have another ender.
exchange, we have taken our tribute, our puppet, our control. This power is ours and ours alone. We shall prevail.
Did they put this out? Hold on. Is this from Epic Game? Like Epic made this?
Oh, yeah,
Like that's not a fan made thing. Epic made that video. I need to know that for sure before I say anything
okay.
else.
Well, I'm seeing if they have it on their official site, but yes. Well, it's on their Twitter. That's 100% true.
What the fuck, dog? What? I didn't see any of this. I just pulled the headline because I saw that and I read through the article and I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like Apple. I didn't know they were like, yo, we're about to start fucking a new Holocaust over this. What?
Dude, this is new gamer warfare. They are trying to send angry Fortnite children playing on their mother's phones to Apple to fucking get mad that they can't buy V-Bucks straight through Epic.
You know what? It's because they gave those Samsung exclusive Galaxy skins in the beginning, and that was their first mistake. They should have got some Apple skins.
Okay.
It didn't even dawn on me that the fucking guy talking was an Apple. Like I didn't even notice it. I was just thinking, I was like, wow, there's a big Apple talking fucking Men in Black Apple over here. And he's got a little worm in him, and he's bitten too, just like the. Oh my god, dude!
So apparently, this is based on a.
It's a movie. I've seen a clip
so
of this before. Yeah,
it's based on an
yeah.
old Macintosh ad. We'll get to why this is news in a second.
I remember this. Yeah.
In all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of a contradictory thoughts. Unification as a force is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth.
So I guess I don't know what Mac's message here was. Maybe they say it at the end. It probably does that scroll up.
It was
thing.
because they were. If I remember this right, it's been a long time since I've seen it. I'll let her throw her hammer though, but.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984
Okay.
will be.
So basically, from what I recall, because I watched something about this not too long ago, actually. So it was during the time when when the Macintosh was first coming out, like when Apple had decided that they had made, I believe, like their user interface like friendly, because computers at the time were like not UI did not really exist.
Yeah.
So it was like hard to interface with them, hard for the common person to understand how to use a computer.
Yeah.
So this was like their push of being like, we're here for change. We're ready to change the way that this is formatted. We're here to break out so that everyone can use technology more or less. And I think it was at the time where their only like major competitor, I believe, was like IBM, which was still like, they were still making work machines where this is like, we're going to make a computer for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of their message of being like, it's time to break free from the shackles of, computers not being for everyone. It's for the world now.
Well, speaking of breaking shackles, Epic Games is trying to break the shackles of the App Store 30% fee that you get when you accrue or whenever somebody purchases microtransactions from you. It is so hard to take any of this seriously after that. Like when I first saw it, I laughed so fucking hard that I nearly passed out at work. Like I laughed so hard at work. And then watching it again, it hit me like another wave.
Man, it's just knowing you got the deepest fucking pockets in gaming history.
Tencent owns you or owns part of you. Like
yeah, but they already had. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the monthly intake for that game, but it's upwards of 200 to 300 million every month that
Yeah.
game, that Fortnite only brings in. That's before any other revenue from anywhere else. And again,
So
it seems like they're spending money making deals with companies and stuff
yeah.
like that.
Well, I want to really quickly just kind of go over the like high level of this. I won't read line by
Yeah.
line, but essentially, last week we had talked about Apple kind of putting a stifle on streaming services, and you
Mhm.
look at that when we were talking about it, and I don't think one thing we really touched on is like outside of the initial like subscription cost, you're really not buying much through it. Like Game
Well,
Pass
that's
does
what
have the option to buy things, but like if it wasn't available on mobile to do that, like who fucking cares? Like go to a browser and do that because
yeah. Well,
but
it was
so
what we were saying with like the compare when I was comparing it to Netflix, is it's like you're paying for the subscription of Netflix and then you're doing every content that's on Netflix. It's not
mhm.
like, yeah, those games it's a little different because those games individually have services, but
Yeah,
it's the same thing if you go to YouTube. Like if you have YouTube, that's a free streaming service, so you're not paying anything to get into that platform. However,
yeah.
there's like YouTube Premium, and then there's YouTube channels that have premium subscriptions, and then if you could buy merch from the YouTube channel creator. So how is that any different than just
Well,
this digital thing? Because
Jeff
that's still all coming through
um
your phone, which is what they're saying. So
Jeff Gerstmann on Giant Bomb was like, I understand that Apple wants to like protect people from fraudulent apps. They want to protect people from like obvious scams, like the quality control, like they want to have a piece of that. But like he said that these companies are vetting that already. Like you're not going to have Google
yeah,
release some piece of shit app on Stadia that's going to fucking run your credit cards. Like not going to happen. Microsoft's also
no,
not going to let that shit through quality control either. So,
no,
um
and I mean, and they specifically stand to lose a bunch by allowing that kind of stuff to happen in their own game. Because even if you look at the microtransaction, I don't think anybody's gonna say, "Oh, my fucking son spent $40 on iTunes." It'll be like, "My son spent $40 on fucking Fortnite."
yeah.
So it's like they're not. The discussion comes down to, again, Epic and Fortnite. It doesn't come down to Apple. I don't think. I mean, I'm sure there's cases where it does, but I would say generally speaking, it's going to be, yeah, like my son's bought fucking Fortnite money. It's not, they bought an app or
Mhm.
whatever. They
Well,
know where that money went if it went somewhere because that's all their
that's
son is doing
the
on the phone.
but that's the thing though is that they want that 30%, right? So real quick,
Yeah.
Apple like decided, hey, or Epic made a weird move. Okay, so they made the first move on this, I believe. Epic decided to update Fortnite on iOS and Android, and said, hey, if you want, you can buy V-Bucks straight from us for like a 30% or 20% discount permanently. This is not a sale. This is if you buy them direct, you get a discount no matter what.
Mhm.
Um,
That's
whether or
good
not
for
they
PC
lowered,
players, I guess.
well, I mean, whether or not they lowered the prices there, I haven't checked because I don't play. So if they didn't do
I
it
can.
there, then
I'll look while you
yeah.
continue.
So they made this bold move, did updated their client with this, and then like basically to poke the bear and be like, okay, Apple, what are you going to do about this? We're on your platform now. What are you going to do if we do this? And they got banned. And then all of a sudden, they filed like an injunction, like a formal complaint against Apple, like through the legal system. About stifling competition and treating apps unfairly, which they have been in hot water about recently in Congress. They're like anti-consumer, and like anti-competitive practices.
Apple specifically, you're saying?
Apple specifically. I mean, there's other companies that they were targeting Facebook about some of their anti-competitor practices and how they
Well, and they've
absorb
gotten in
companies.
issues with showing certain ads and stuff specifically, it seems like,
Yeah.
or so it was something to do with the ads they were showing to people.
Well, that was a while
Yeah.
ago. Like this is pretty recently. Is all this stuff coming to light?
Well, no, it happened recently with the Trump stuff because they were like they were showing something with his ads that were coming up, and
Yeah.
they seemed like those were fraudulent and whatever. It doesn't necessarily matter. But go ahead.
Yeah. So, uh, Apple banned them, and then they made this fucking weird, and it seems produced. Like they knew it was going to happen. Like they knew
It happened
that.
pretty quick to be like here. Yeah, well, because it seems like they knew they had the move that Apple was going to make after they made theirs, so they just had a an extra bullet.
Fucking weird ass video, like trying to
Oh, it plays
incite.
when
Like,
you open Fortnite.
it does.
I just opened it because you can't buy V-Bucks from the Epic Store that I remember. You have to be doing it in game. But yeah, as soon as I loaded up the game, this is the first thing that it shows you is this.
Oh my
Well, here
God.
just to verify. Here is me loading up Fortnite, and that's that. And then we'll go to the free Fortnite. Here it goes. Save 20% with Epic Direct Payment. Buy direct and save 20% V-Bucks and real money limited time offers with Epic Direct Payment. More info available here. Let's see. Okay.
Did they have a
Oh, so
middle finger
you even get a
Apple
free
skin?
item for doing this.
Okay.
What's that?
Do they have like a do they have like a fucking middle finger to Apple scythe that you can use when you're chopping
I don't
down
know.
trees?
Let me. I hate to do this in such poor quality, but let me look and see if there is any.
Fuck you,
No,
Apple
it looks like
items.
it's just Aquaman and
Okay.
and then this
And Ninja.
graffiti of a person, and then another character made out of graffiti.
Yeah, and
and
they
then
got
Aquaman
Ninja on
here.
there. Do they have a PewDiePie skin yet?
I don't think so. I think it's mostly.
Fuck.
It seems like it's mostly robots and construction workers.
Fuck. Well.
Yeah. Actually, that does seem to be well. I don't know actually, because I remember. I think this used to be $10 for 1,000,
Okay.
and then I think it used to be 2,400 for $20. So this isn't necessarily all that clear because it's sort of.
Yeah, you think they would put that on
show
there.
Because it used to be like, here's 2,400 plus this, or here's 20 whatever plus this. So it seems like they did change the pricing, but it's not necessarily clear that there is a discount being implemented, unless you add it to cart or something. But I don't plan on.
So
Maybe let me see what it does, because maybe it'll bring up my credit card and show me a discount when it's actually in the cart.
show me that screen and the 4 digits on the back.
Right.
And your zip code and your address.
No, $7.99 and then add tax to $8.65. But like I said, I do believe that was $10 before that.
So they do this bold move, right? They say, "Hey, the ball's in your court. Fuck you, Apple," and then they ban them. Well, everybody was like, "Oh, fuck you, Apple. Fuck you, Apple." Not too long after, Google bans them from their platform too.
Sure,
said,
yeah, it makes sense.
Google said, "Yeah, we're not getting our cut either. It's not this isn't a Fortnite versus Apple thing. This is you guys trying to like shake us down in a way," which I get, right? Like everybody wants their cut. Everybody wants to get like their piece of it. Epic wants to keep it for themselves, right? Maybe they shave a little bit off the top.
I think the argument comes in because that's their whole platform. Is like they built a storefront to give more to developers. Effectively, it's like you release your game on here, we'll give you more of a cut, we'll take less of a cut. If you use our engine, we'll cut even more out. And if we give you $1 million, you have to exclusively put your game on here, or however X amount of money they're giving per game or whatever it is.
I commend them for that in a way. Like Epic did make some bold moves as far as like getting exclusivity for things, and whether or not you like exclusivity, whatever, I'll play a game wherever it is, even if I don't like the platform. But
that's the criticism I have with it, is because I'm all for developers getting more money for sure. The hindrance I think comes in two sides. One, I can't imagine that because of the blowback and everything that people aren't just not buying the game until it becomes available elsewhere. So I feel like their initial revenue, it almost seems unnecessary. And again, I have no numbers to verify any of this, but I would imagine that the amount of money that Epic has to give them for the exclusivity has to offset the amount of sales they are not getting by virtue of only being available on this one platform for X amount of time until it comes out on whatever other platform. And then they get another boost of revenue, hopefully, depending upon how the people feel about them signing that deal in the first place.
Yeah, I'll say the exclusives. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say, like, the exclusivity stuff is like a little less of what I'm talking about. I mean, I did mention that, but like one thing I commend them for is how they treat their licensing for Unreal and how they treat
Mhm.
their storefront. Because even if you don't have even if you don't have exclusivity through them, you're still making a bigger cut selling through the Epic Store. It's not like they're
Yeah.
charging you a different fee because you're on competitor platforms. They're in this position where they believe in a, they get their cut, but they want to take as much, like as little as possible, while
Yeah.
giving developers a bigger gain, and I believe that's their actual philosophy. I don't think that there's anything necessarily like nefarious about that, like kind of like, secretive,
Mhm.
like, oh, we're fucking these people in different ways. But go ahead,
I,
what's your second part about the
well, so
exclusivity?
to that end, I think that like I'm all for giving developers more money because what they do is difficult. The lash out they get from people playing games that should just be enjoying them is insane, and people get very angry and aggressive, and
Fucking
get death threats and all
ooblets.
this other shit
Yeah.
that they don't deserve anyway, no matter what they're doing. So yeah, and they work long hours, unreal amounts of hours, and all this stuff. No pun intended, but they deserve more money for what they're doing, for sure.
Hmm.
And again, if you look at game pricing, which is about to spike again by what seems like another $10 for AAA titles and stuff like that, because the amount of with inflation, games have not changed in price and gotten more expensive over time like they would initially, because
Yeah.
there's been a longer gap for a increase than there used to be. All that being said, though, the issue that I think comes in is like, yes, Steam is getting more money out of it as opposed to how much Epic is getting, and again, less to the developer. But overall, the service that Steam provides is so much better than the service that Epic is providing, and they continue to provide a better service overall. I mean, you look at like cloud saves or a cart or
Yeah.
forums or even down to reviews. This was the thing I was looking at the other day. Is like I was looking at Horizon Zero Dawn because they've recently started to add um, critic reviews and recommended stuff to the Epic Store, but it's not per game. It's like, so for this one specifically, like these are all 95%, 85% mighty, 5 stars, highly recommend. That's for the PS4 version of this game. So that has nothing to do with the PC version of the game, which has had a litany of performance issues, which you don't know anything about if you're only on Epic Store, which I think is, or you're not following other coverage or whatever. But again, you look at it, you go, so there's like the curated system, there's like the Steam trading cards, there's the backlog that you have already, which is not a fault of Epic. That's just by virtue of when they came into the game. But there's so many services that Steam provides. I mean, even to the point of having a shopping cart, which Epic Store
Yeah.
still does not have. And we've been at this almost 2 years now ish. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
one of those things where you're like, I understand they're making more money, but they are providing a much better store and service to shop in than Epic is providing. It seems like Epic Store setup is, here's a bunch of free shit. Here's a huge discount on all the stuff you're gonna buy here, and that's fine and great. And I appreciate those free services. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, their service is still nowhere near what Steam's is, by virtue, I think, of, because it's not like Steam makes a ton of games. They don't really make any games very much anymore. They make, they update a few things here and there. They still mess with Counter-Strike, they do all that. But Valve as a company doesn't make a ton of games. So most of their development side seems like it all goes into the store, and you notice it.
Yeah.
Because you'll even see things where somebody will post on Reddit like, man, I wish we had this on Steam. And within like 2 weeks, you go, oh, here it is. Like recently with like the point shop, you're like, hey, there's no easy way to get to this. And they're like, okay, well, give us 2 days. And then they update it and there it is. And it's like, and that's the thing too, is like Epic has the money and they have the team, but all they really seem to focus on is Fortnite. Like that seems to be the thing they care about the most. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But again, if you're going to try this huge leap to pull people away and do all these things to get onto your store to support these developers, then you as a company need to support this platform you're trying to make people come to,
Here's
because you're
what.
not giving us a reason to really be here other
Yeah.
than to get free stuff, but it doesn't mean you're going to buy anything. If you're giving me free shit, I'll take it, but it's not Like, that doesn't incentivize me to spend more money on your store, because even then, if you're giving these games away for free, you pay the developer, but we're still not technically supporting the developer unless there is some kind of deal that they've worked out that we don't know about, that it's like, hey, based on X amount of downloads, we'll give you this much money,
Well,
whatever.
I think
So
as the Epic Game Store scales, a lot of that stuff might get ironed out. I don't think it'll ever be as robust socially and like feature heavy as Steam, but on the same
no.
token, like I try to look at it from the perspective of the actual dev themselves, right? So let's take into case, like, I'm making a game. I've been at it for like 4 years. Me, a small team of dudes. We just get together and we're fucking around with it. But, we're also working side jobs. We're also like trying to make shit happen in our real lives and
Oh,
like
yeah. I
developing the
don't.
game. But like, I'm saying, like, what makes that upfront cost of exclusivity so appealing is that, like, it's like, fuck, all of this effort, and we've had like donations and like maybe you've crowdfunded a little bit, but it's like, fuck, they're willing to drop like maybe 2 mil, whatever the deal is. They're willing to drop this shit on us in an investment that we can have to like not only support ourselves, but also maybe start looking at hiring more people, getting more resources. I think that there's a lot to say about like how Epic handles that side of things for developers. And I think it's a little bit more healthy than Steam's philosophy, where it's like, okay, we have the highest install base. Everybody and their fucking mom has a Steam account if you have a gaming PC. Like,
Yeah.
we're here because we're big. They haven't budged on their pricing for being published on Steam. They do have a problem with, and I think it's still a problem in a way, is some of the curation like kind of sucks in Steam.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. It's gotten better, but it's still not great. Yeah,
it's
for
still
sure.
not great. There's tons of garbage getting on Steam. They had the they had the green light stuff that they did, which they were like, ah, fuck it. Hey, if you want to like put like fucking fuck you Trump game or fuck you Obama, shoot him in the head game on Steam, we're not gonna quality control this shit anymore.
Well, but I think that comes into with like, though, for that specifically, it's more like there is a refund policy now that's like pretty liberal. Like, they
Yeah.
really, I've only had, out of the, I would say, hundreds of games I've returned to Steam, I've only had an issue with one. So they're really like
Yeah.
pretty generous on that end because of that. And I think also, like, I don't necessarily think that it's up to them to decide what a game, because then you get into that hierarchy of like, well, these are the games we've decided are good, and these are the ones you can play. And I think that it is more open, more of an open platform to let the community really decide what is worth their time and what is worth playing, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that that's maybe, because I mean, that's basically what we're doing. You know what I mean? We're just saying, hey, these games were good, these ones, weren't, whatever. And I think without the ability to have those somewhere, I think which, granted, there's like itch and there's other stuff, there's other places to put that out there. But I think that we shouldn't, it's not, again, I'm not saying I love seeing 800 mobile games on Steam. I definitely don't. But I don't think that it is in our best interest to try and limit, because again, as someone who plays games, or as people that follow video games, or anyone coming in, especially if you're on a PC playing video games, because it's still not necessarily niche, but it's still, I think that community is more aware of a lot of stuff just by virtue of the way your introduction or entrance to games is a lot more. You need to have a bit more information anyway jumping into it. Not to say that we're smarter than console players or anything like that. I just think by the virtue of having to, either like research a computer or build this or spend more money initially, you're having to do a bit more thought into these things.
Yeah.
Which is a long convoluted way of saying, I think that most of the people on computer or on Steam specifically are playing games can recognize immediately, this sucks. This game is bad. There's no need to buy or play or support or do anything with it. So it's not it's not the ideal curation setup, but I would rather that than be limited to like, here's the 10 games you're allowed to play because we've deemed them as good games. And I think that's the other thing that's sort of affects Epic to some ways. It's like, well, these are the only games that we're putting on here, and it's not that. And some of those games aren't great either. Like that's the other thing is like some of the ones that are like Alpha Genesis 1, not a very good video game. Like and then Predator, not a great video game. Like there's just like a lot of stuff that's on there that still sucks. So it's like that curation's fine, but that curation still comes down to an opinion at some point. So it's like, what are you gonna do? And to your end too, with what you're saying is like, again, I have no qualm with the developer taking I don't want obviously there's that punk or indie side of me that's like, I don't want them to sell out or whatever. But I think developing a game is totally different where it's such a competitive marketplace that like you have to take the best deal that comes at you for the overall benefit of your game and your company, because it could go away tomorrow, or that game you just made, people might not like it, and that could be the end of it. I mean, the amount of game companies that have existed and disappeared or been bought or, swallowed up by another company or whatever is astronomical. I mean, you look at all the games on Steam, again, there's so many LLCs or games companies that just exist that you've never heard of that have made one game or whatever. So it's almost like bands, really. It's like, well, I heard that band, they made one good album and then they kind of broke up, and then half of them went over here and the other half went over to this company, or some stopped, playing music altogether or whatever. So it's like I don't fault the developer whatsoever for it. I think, again, the onus comes on to Epic for if they're really trying to make this push, they really have to make their Walmart into a Target. Like they have to make their store a better place to be for all this stuff. If this is what you want as a company, then you really need to put your thing into it and not just, your cash cow. Like instead of that, because again, I don't know. It just seems like there needs to be more that happens on their end than has happened. And like I said, just to reiterate, I don't put the developers at fault for any of this stuff.
Of course.
And I think the backlash they get is super unfair. So, but that's that's a personal thing.
I like what you touched on there, because I think it is a better climate today to be in games, as far as your avenues of making money. Because before, you're right, it's like if you were making games in like the I guess you would say golden age, probably like late 90s, early 2000s. If you wanted to make games, you had to have that Activision, you had to have that EA, you had to have like Ubisoft, you had to have somebody believe in your vision enough to want to throw you some money, to want to get your games developed. Unless you're somebody like fucking id Software who's like, okay, we're just gonna throw this game out there, shareware this shit, and then like word of mouth, when we release this thing, you're gonna buy it. That's what,
or CD Projekt, like The Witcher. Well, they put a little more advertising into this one, but the first two they really didn't advertise much at all. They were just like, here's this thing we made, and then it exploded. But
I think the open storefronts do a lot better of making the consumer more available, instead of like locking you behind like, oh fuck, I'm never gonna get this game made because I just can't get somebody to invest. And I think crowdfunding helps a lot with that. I think like Epic's competitive means of like, hey, you come over here, maybe we give you a little bit up front, and then like we take a little bit off the sales of the game to recoup the cost. But ultimately, I think there are a lot of people who hate the Epic Store, and I get it, but I personally don't mind it. The features, you're right, you're absolutely right. If they want to compete with Steam at any capacity, they got to get the feature set down. But
and I will say I don't hate their store either, and I don't hate the fact that they're trying to compete. I just mean that, again, just in general, if that is what they're trying to do, they really got to step it up.
Yeah.
And it's that same thing too, is like you were talking about with, how oversaturated Steam is. I mean, what does the Epic Store look like in 10 years? Like there's at a point where it's like, if we've purchased all these games on this system, you have to keep them on a server at some point because we paid for it. So the store, eventually there's no way for it to not become oversaturated just by virtue of these games got purchased here. They have to be re-downloaded. Maybe you can take them off for sale, but they're still available to be re-downloaded or whatever. But at some point, that storefront becomes covered, just the way any store does that. Like any online retailer, really. I mean, Steam, I would equate to more of like the Amazon of game design or game sales, because it's like you can get really any game you want here. It's just what kind do you want, and what quality do you want and what star rating and what all this. And yeah, it's just like I don't know. I don't exactly know where that point was going. I had this thought. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, it is like Amazon, and then I was like, what does that actually mean, though, you
Fuck.
idiot?
Yeah,
So
well, I think we're missing the moral of the story here is that go download GOG Galaxy. That's
yeah, get GOG, some solid dudes over there.
yeah,
CD
I mean,
Projekt guys, they do good work, and
yeah,
they're about game preservation, and that's what we should really be focused on.
download that GOG Galaxy, link all of your accounts, put all your installs in one place. You'll never have to look at a different storefront ever again.
I did
That's
find that to be very cool.
it
Like
is
that was
very
one thing of
nifty.
just being like, oh, I can search for every game I own on every platform now instead of having to fucking shuffle and open up every single launcher to do. Well, and again, and we can move on from this in a second for sure because we've been going over it again. But that's that same argument where it's like, why are all of these companies? There's got to be a grander reason for them doing this, and maybe it is the percentage cut that they're taking. That's why they do it. But it's like, Ubisoft made their own, EA made their own, Bethesda made their own launcher and storefront and all this stuff. And it's like, I get that the direct sales are better, but none of these services are even close to Steam again. And they also are like, it's not to say they don't make good games, but the hubris behind going, oh, we're only gonna, especially Bethesda, I think for compared to the
Oh,
other companies, because
well,
they have such a small niche amount of games to be like,
I'll
we're gonna make an entire storefront and launcher. You can only do this here. Like, I get it if they're making an Elder Scrolls only launcher, but that game has a separate launcher in addition to the launcher that you get from their
I,
store or
I
whatever.
I don't want to sound
But
like a fanboy or anything, but I will give Bethesda kind of a benefit of the doubt here. They have in recent years made a big push to acquire new studios to make more unique stuff. And I think that's one thing
oh
I
yeah,
came out of QuakeCon like this year. Like I'm like, fuck, man, like their shit actually like aside from being first person and whatever, story driven games, I think like what they got coming down the pipeline is pretty diverse. The one that like really shits me up is Ubisoft because I will say they do have a way more diverse library than Bethesda. But you look at a lot of
yeah.
their like heavy hitting games, and dude, I don't know, but like I guess the court of public opinion is just like these games are like flop after flop after flop, and like the Division 2 I think is like a light in that. Wildlands, the first one was pretty good. But
Maybe they shit out with the second one. And
yeah.
I mean, Odyssey did pretty well. Odyssey and
Yeah.
Origins both did pretty well. Although, again, Valhalla we'll see, because it sort of seems like it's going down the same path again.
And there's a
Uh,
lot of that hubris that you're talking about, though, of just like, well, we'll take our games and put them on our store. They're never going to buy them on Steam, and then they all cave like 2 years later. Like you look at EA
yeah, it's
right
just
now.
so unnecessary.
Yeah.
Is my frustration, and it's like they're not even like necessarily willing to work with like for Bethesda, for example. And I will say too, though, like, not that I'm a fanboy of Bethesda either, but when you say they have some stuff coming down the pipeline, it's like, is it more first person shooter type games or more first person perspective adventure games? Because it feels
Yeah.
like it's just going to be
Yeah.
that some more. And it's not.
Yeah.
And again, I love Arcane. Like, I've loved every game they've made. I'm excited for Deathloop. I think that looks awesome. But it is a first person shooter at the end of the day. And it's like, and then we got Doom. That's a first person shooter. We got Fallout. That's a first person shooter. I assume whatever Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be that. I gotta guess that Starborn is probably going to be a first person shooter
Ghostwire.
again. So it's not that I don't, because again, even if we're going to compare it to Ubisoft, at least they do like Trials. They've got Trackmania. They've got The Crew.
Yeah.
They've got
So I guess
shooter.
I guess
they
I
have a
am fanboying a bit, just a bit, just a little.
yeah, and again, not to cut you down. I'm just like,
Yeah,
if I
yeah.
think about it, I'm like, well, I don't know if it really is that different.
That's true.
And it's
That's
not.
true.
But again, I will say, I don't know, because again, they kind of are similar companies, because it's sort of like, we found this formula. Let's make more games on this formula, because it's like, well, we made the Elder Scrolls. Let's keep making Elder Scrolls that are very similar to that Elder Scrolls. And then this is like, well, we made Assassin's Creed. Let's keep making Assassin's Creed like this. And it's like, we made Far Cry. Well, let's keep making Far Cry. And it's
Yeah.
like, hey, people really like to climb towers. Do you want to do that as a car also? And you're like, I guess so. Maybe we'll do that some more. But it's like, I don't know. Again, it's just that competitive nature where I can't believe that that at the end of the day, because even if you buy the game on Steam, you're still having to load it through their storefront. It's just that unnecessary step because it's like the intention was that you just buy it directly from them. But again, nobody's going to do that with the feature set available of Steam. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you can just get it on Steam at the same price or even cheaper at times. Like, why would you pick the inferior over? Because it's so much more than a store, I guess, is maybe the other thing. But anyway, I sound more of a fanboy going through Steam, but it's really just a feature set
Yeah.
that seems, it's like Apple's ecosystem, right? Like, it's like I've been on Android for a long time and it's a more open platform, but if you own Apple stuff, everything works well with itself. And it's like there's no other quite as advanced integration than what they've made. And it sucks because it's sort of a monopoly on that kind of setup. But again, it is like, and maybe more the opposite, because Steam is more like, hey, everybody, please come here and let's work with you. Whereas the other companies are like, nah, I kind of want to do my own thing, but we're gonna put it there, but I kind of don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, please. And then again with well, yeah, we can move on because we just talked about that for fucking 30 minutes, basically.
It's all good, man. It's all good. Well, I'm sure there's going to be more coming about this Epic stuff, but we'll
Yeah.
we'll keep.
Well, we can
talking
burn
about
through these
that.
other ones because they're not
Yeah.
super insane.
Yeah, the next one it's simple. Everybody saw this coming. Lockhart, aka the Xbox One S, it's pretty much confirmed at this point. Controller fell off of a truck somewhere in the middle of like I think what the reporting is like in Chicago somewhere, or like right around that area is where this photo was taken. So yeah, the controller's kind of out in the wild. You can see the share button right there, right on the front of it. I like that they're kind of taking the like look and feel of some of the like Elite controller stuff and kind of melding it into what their new controller will be.
Oh, with the D-pad, I guess.
Yeah, the D-pad and it looks like it might like have some of the better like triggers than the older systems had.
So is that
controllers did.
that's not the confirmed name though, is it? The Xbox Series S?
So that is basically like what the rumors had been for a while. So if you look, it shows the like compatible devices here.
Right.
And here it is, X and S. And this is what's confusing, right? Is because
well, they did say Project Scarlet was their next unveil, I think.
Yeah, I think they're going to, because they're still saying they're going to be producing the original Xbox One S, but I think what they're going to end up doing is rebranding that to just the Xbox One and then moving the S into the Xbox Series. And whether or not the S is like optimized just for 1080p gaming, or maybe it's like a box that does like exclusively like xCloud streaming.
Yeah.
They haven't really come out and said, because I mean Sony has both models. They're coming out up front and saying like, hey, we got one with an optical drive, we have one that doesn't. Which one do you want? Well, probably the one that's cheaper, but if you want physical games, you go with the other one.
Right.
So same thing, the same concept here. They're kind of rolling with the like lower spec release on top of like their regular spec release. But I hope this doesn't bite them in the ass like it did with Nintendo, like creating too confusing of like naming schemes for consoles, because that really fucked the Wii U over. Because it's like, everybody knew what a Wii was, but
I think the difference here, though, more or less, is like I don't know, because it's not really me who would be concerned, because it's more on the parent and the grandparent that this becomes an issue. Because I was gonna say, I'm like, well, I know the difference, and I think anybody looking for one is going to know. But if you're, the person buying it for someone and you're not in the know, this could be super confusing, as it already kind of is, because their Xboxes are already kind of naming themselves all over the place, and then this doesn't seem like that helps that situation anymore.
And you're right. I think people are more connected today, and people are a little bit more aware of like when new tech comes out, especially children. Like if I was a kid, my way of finding out when new shit was coming out was like Thanksgiving before Black Friday. My family would like lay out a bunch of catalogs, and I'd be like, oh shit, there's a new Wario Land game. Like I didn't fucking know.
Oh yeah.
And so like today, like kids with fucking iPads, they can just like, oh, like let me just look at all these fucking games, and they know exactly what they're looking for. So maybe they won't run into that trap, but
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I used to take the route of I would print out a photo of it because I remember when the GameCube came out, I printed out a GameCube and then I printed out pictures of the games I want and like made a collage and I was like, this is what I want. Oh, actually,
Yeah.
speaking of the GameCube, so I
Yeah,
didn't even think
so
about that, but
yeah, I didn't put this one up just yet, but yeah, we'll probably hear more about that next Xbox pretty soon.
we'll see. Yeah, who
So
knows?
Nintendo fans have gone like complete InfoWars in the last week. I don't know if you've been seeing a lot of that.
Yeah,
Of like people circling details in this one single photo to try and be like, oh, they're either so back up a bit. The big rumor this year with Nintendo is that they're working on a big like Mario 25th anniversary like remaster release of a bunch of old 3D games.
yeah. For the
But
35th anniversary, I think it is of Mario.
35th. Yeah, 35th. You're right.
Yeah.
I said 25th cuz I'm a fucking idiot, but
Oh,
um
yeah, it's fine.
so
It's fine to be a fucking idiot. It's
thank
fine.
you. Thank you.
No,
I've lived in pride of my fucking lack
yeah, it
of a
hasn't
brain.
bothered me too much.
Yeah. So this is the photo here. And the emphasis in the rumors has been like Mario 64 and Sunshine. And this has actually like woken me to a side that I didn't know existed of people. Like people fucking love Sunshine. And I always
Great,
assumed
man.
that it is a great game. I love that game, but I always
It's one of
assumed
my favorite
like
ones. Yeah.
the court of public opinion had changed and it was like kind of a polarizing Mario game.
I think it's
Um
still, yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I definitely think that that's accurate
Yeah, so this is it,
because I've
and I
definitely
mean,
seen people that fucking hate that game, and I don't understand it because it's like one of the more interesting ones, I think,
I'm
as far as a
trying
Mario goes.
I'm trying to remember, but I'm pretty sure like Nintendo released an image like this again like not too long ago about a different game.
They did another Summer Mario last year, which I
Oh,
think
they
actually
did?
might be that watermelon photo that is right there, which
That's
may have
right.
been uh
So this was
it could have
actually
been. Well, this is when this person posted it, which I think was in response to this other one. But I think that might have been the one from last year. I could be wrong though. I didn't really follow up.
yeah, so it's been like rumored for a while that they're making like a new sequel or they're re-releasing or remastering. Yeah, this was last year that they're going to remaster or re-release Mario Sunshine. And
Yeah.
sure, I would love to see it. I would actually love to see them do like remasters of all the 3D Mario games if that rumor is true, but it just seems a little too ambitious of a rumor to me.
Well, I mean, it doesn't to me because it is something like it can't be too insanely difficult to upscale like the Galaxy games, right? Like, and you've definitely seen emulators of Mario Sunshine running on like a Dolphin that are up-resed and all this. So even I don't even think they necessarily even need to remaster them. I think if they just re-release them, and maybe even did just an HD of some kind or like an upscale or just made the performance a little better or whatever, that would be fine. Because the thing about this one too is that palm tree is for sure from from Sunshine.
Oh
I've
yeah.
like seen that in that game, and that is definitely that. It looks very much like Sunshine. I hadn't seen the previous one that people were referencing, like saying, "Oh, they did this last year," but this one especially seems very much more in line with Mario Sunshine than that one they put the year before that. Even that one was saying something about that one said something it had the word Odyssey in it in their tweet, and this one's
Well,
just stay
I,
cool, which that game is very based in water and in the sun, and again that could just be summer, whatever.
I think what might be maybe a little telling, like if I were to like really dive into like the rumors, like this is a confirmation, is that they
Mhm.
put way more effort into this other photo. They put way
Absolutely.
more effort into this one.
Well, and I
Um,
don't think I mean they're not so naive that they wouldn't put this out and people wouldn't think that. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
unless they're having some really fun ruse and they're just going, "Hey, watch this, watch what we can get out of these people." Like otherwise, why do you do this knowing what would come with it? Like there
and
unless
Nintendo is very careful lately about setting expectation. When they do a
yeah,
direct, They have to like send out a secondary tweet that's like, by the way, we're not talking about new games yet. We're talking about previously announced titles, because people in the comments section or like on Reddit or Twitter are like blowing up like, oh, they're about to announce a new F-Zero game. I can't fucking believe it.
And they have never really said anything unless they had to. They've never been a company to go say a bunch of shit if they didn't need to say it. And most of the time, they don't say it until they absolutely have to say it. I mean, also, if you look at their track record for this last like 2 years with the Switch, it's been like take Paper Mario. It's like, hey, Paper Mario, in a month, and we're like, oh, okay, that's the first we heard about it. And like, hey, Fire Emblem, like 2 weeks, maybe we'll do it. We'll put one out there. And you're like, oh, all right. It's like, I think maybe Smash Brothers had a longer lead up, but most of the big titles have been like, we've got this, and it's out in like 4 days. Even recently, they're like, Pikmin 3, September, dog, and you're like, that was what, a week ago.
Yeah.
So it's like, they're just like, they're not saying shit, keeping it tight-lipped, and going like, all right, get hyped, you got a month, and you're like, oh, fucking awesome. I mean, I kind of like it, really, because it's like, there's really no room for spoiler or any other bullshit. It's just like, hey, here's this thing you wanted, you wanted it anyway. Why does it matter when we tell you about it, except for when it's going to be here, which is right now? And you're like, yeah, okay, great.
I will 100% preface the entire series of this podcast that we do by saying that I am a very biased to Nintendo. I'm not gonna lie to you, like 1,000%. I mean, I'll call them on their shit. They don't always make perfect games. Anybody telling you that is a fucking liar. But there is nobody else in the gaming industry doing what they're doing, as far as like how they follow release, how they generate hype, how they go about managing expectation, how they just how they operate and function. It's very different than other game studios. Like right now, you see Sony and Microsoft like battling each other and like who's going to announce the price first, who's got these exclusive games, and Nintendo's just on the outside of that. Just on the outside of that, in a comfortable position, and they can do really whatever they want. Like they're not tied to a lot of that.
You can really say the same thing about Epic. I mean, that's the other thing is like because of what they just did, or you look, and I'm not a big fan of them or Fortnite or whatever, other than the crazy shit they do with that game, like holding concerts, holding these advertisements, telling Apple to go fuck itself. Like that's not something most companies are gonna do.
They're pushing, or even begin to consider it.
And they don't even think. They're like, all right, fuck them. Yeah, fuck them right here. And you're like, oh, okay. So I have to commend them again just for that, maybe even more than anything. It's just like they're taking the chances, but they've also got the money. And I think Nintendo's in the same boat. But I mean, I would back Nintendo more than one, just for personal bias. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Nintendo's always been a quality company. I mean, even the Wii U, they see that as a flop, but that had a lot of good games on it.
Oh yeah. Like I mean, a lot of good games. I was Team Wii U. 100%. There was a time where I had a Wii U, a PS3, and a PC, and I was fine. Yeah. I didn't get a PS4 until late in the console cycle. I didn't get an Xbox One until a few months ago when somebody just gave one to me. So
I've always been, my side's always been get upgrade or get a PC and then just buy whatever Nintendo makes, and you can kind of avoid the other companies. Like, not to say that there's anything wrong with, I mean, PS4 has definitely good exclusives and stuff, but I don't think you're super losing out by not playing some of those. But I think, and again, that's personal bias, but I think Nintendo again makes more interesting stuff overall, or at least more out there or refined things than Sony or Microsoft do to combine. But
well, because like the other companies are like, wait until this date and you'll see something cool. Dude, I was in Oklahoma visiting like a client for work, and I was getting out of my car at like 7:30 in the morning after like a 2.5 hour drive, and I look at my phone and it's like Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Interesting.
Yeah.
Like there was no previous announcement.
Nothing, and then it's like, oh, and next month, and you're like, okay, all right. Or August, September, October. Yeah, September. Yeah. So yeah, it's like, yeah, well, here's this game. It'll be out in a month. And I think that's a great lead time, really, because it's just like, it's coming. And especially in the climate, it's like you're gonna buy it digitally, so you don't really even have to pre-order it. It doesn't matter. There's a copy waiting for you no matter what. So, you know, I mean, again, if you're into physical, that sucks. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like they don't really need to do anything. And especially Nintendo is such a huge company and so wide known, and especially now with how many people own Switches as a result of the pandemic, even more to the point, it's just like we got another game and we made it. So it'll be here in about 2 weeks. So that's up to you if you want it. And you're like, yeah, I do. I do.
And that's what I'm wondering. Like, I'll say this before we move on to my next little thing is, I wonder what else they have aside from Pikmin, aside from like, I know they got Animal Crossing content coming out, but like, they gotta have some kind of direct or something coming where because if they're doing these surprise releases, their holiday, they have to have something, man.
And I think it's a Mario bomb they're gonna drop because they haven't announced anything else. I mean, the only other, and I don't think they've spoken too much about it, but other than the sequel to Breath of the Wild, which I don't know that would be out this year, but maybe because Breath of the Wild is 3 years old already now. And it's on a similar engine, so maybe like they could shoot that out. Just go, here you go, Merry Christmas. Here's Zelda.
I mean, Zelda and Mario came out within like a pretty quick window of each other.
Yeah, they were basically launch titles. I mean, Breath was a launch title, and Odyssey was not far behind that.
So I wonder if those things are going to be lockstep, like not from here on out, but at least this next release. Like we're probably going to get. I would say Mario first, like a new Mario title first, and then Breath of the Wild 2 next holiday. I would assume, or summer next year.
It depends. I mean, it depends because again, because they've just been quiet and been able to keep it quiet, so we really don't have any idea. But I mean, yeah, it's been a while, so I mean, they could swing it. It's hard to say. Like you said though, I expect a Mario of some kind. I expect a big drop, and I think like I would love if they released a massive collection of all of them for like $60. That would be great.
Ooh, yeah.
But I feel like they're gonna piecemeal it to some extent. Like if you could put maybe Sunshine 64 and both Galaxies for $60, I mean that's again, I think you're stealing at that point because those are 4 super good games. But those are sort of the Mario highlights over the last couple of years that we haven't had again. Because it's like we've gotten, you know, all the Super Marios up to 3 and Mario All-Star and stuff a million times. So we don't need that. 3D World would be cool to see again.
What nobody has really meant. A 3D World would be good. I would like to see them bring that to Switch. But like drop the price of the ports for the fucking love of God. But
generally speaking, yeah, because it's a little much. I would take a Wind Waker remaster again, though. To be honest, as much as I don't want to buy another one of those, I would play it again on the Switch for sure.
Yeah,
maybe that's where they went out against Bethesda releasing Skyrim 900 times. Is that you beg Nintendo to give it to you, whereas Bethesda's like, you're gonna fucking buy this on your watch now, and you're like, I don't want to play it on my wrist, and like you do though.
You do.
I really
this
don't.
Is it.
So
this is the next evolution.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like what I don't think anybody's maybe talked about is like what if they just like what if their big announcement is either they remake 64 in like the Odyssey engine or same thing for Sunshine. Like what if they want to, because the Odyssey engine like it does kind of feel like a harken back to 64. So what if they bring that to the table? That I think that would be pretty cool.
I agree. Personally, I'd rather see Sunshine in that engine than I would 64, just by virtue of like having one grown up with it. Like I feel like it, like in Odyssey, when you find the castle and you see all that, you're like, oh, this is cool. This is super cool. And maybe that is like them saying, hey, we're working on it. We're gonna do that. Which would be great. I mean, I have no qualms with either. I just think I don't know. I think if you polished up the 64 version and maybe got it at a better frame rate and just put it out with the graphics what they are, maybe like a little more put together, I think that's enough. Because I think Nintendo generally does that though. They kind of want you to have the nostalgia. They don't necessarily need to take that away because most of those games overall were already good. Like they don't really. Like, cause even you look at Wind Waker and that gets an up-res, but the game still looks basically the same. It just looks tighter or cleaner, but it's still the same. And that's again a testament to Nintendo's art style in general. Is like most of their games still look really good because their art direction was solid when it started. So yeah, I don't know. I would like to see some more good Mario games though, or some old ones. I'd like to go through them again.
Speaking
No.
of good games,
Mhm.
just real quick, I just want to touch on this real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Everybody's stoking the flames of Bloodborne being made on PC all the time. It's something you see quite frequently being begged for, essentially. Like when Horizon Zero Dawn was coming out, like you could see in
Right.
like the Twitch chat when the trailer was dropped. You can see in like YouTube people just like, oh, when are we getting Bloodborne on PC? Well, according to some reports, there was a big round of beta testing done, like internal, like kind of quality control testing for the PC port of Bloodborne, and it's also reported to be coming to PS5 as a new port.
Mhm.
So that's interesting. I don't know, like uh these are a lot of unknown like company, like I've never really heard of these publications or like what's going on here, but it is another example of this isn't the first time we've heard that the development of Bloodborne on PC is in fact happening.
Sure.
Because Sony is way more open right now to allowing like their exclusive PS4 games from third-party studios on other platforms.
Yeah, and we
Or at
unfortunately
least
have
for
to keep buying
PC.
all of them, so they'll keep doing it instead of putting a stop to it at some point in the future. Not that these are not all good games that are worth buying, but you
Yeah.
know, it's a shame you're kind of forced into it, so they'll start actually doing it.
So a couple things. There's some critical bugs in the game that were fixed from the last reported time this happened. They have online working. However, just like the other From Software games on PC, save maybe Sekiro, the frame rate is pretty much locked at a 60. And anything above that fucks with the physics and like just the gameplay in general. So, who
Yeah, but dude,
knows?
I'll take a solid 60 on that game because when I played it on a PS4 Pro, it was
It's a
shit.
slideshow.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it was hard as fuck to get through that game, and I wanted to play it, but it was just like, and maybe again, it could be just by virtue of playing everything at 140 hertz or at least 90 at minimum. Like,
Hmm.
it was like jarring to try and play that game as much as I
Yeah.
wanted to because I picked it up and I was like, oh, this is bad. Like, this is bad, and I didn't, and but the game itself seems great, so I really like to play it. So I mean, I'll take a lock 60. I mean,
Yeah.
if Dark Souls 3 runs at 60, that game runs super smooth on the PC.
I love
So
Dark Souls 3. Like out of all the From games, I think 3 is my favorite. I will say like Bloodborne, I played past the first boss, got into the next area, did a little bit there, and I did find that the performance of the game and just like it didn't feel as deliberate as like the other games did. It felt like sometimes the game was like battling against me in ways, especially when they expect you to do like good timing on like the parry system in the game with the gun. I think performance of that game, especially playing like most of the like Souls games on PC, going to that, it was like night and day. Like if
oh
they
yeah,
could
it was
bring that experience to PC, then I'll finally have an excuse to like play through that game 100% the next time.
well, and two, I think it suffers a bit just because of the art design a little bit because everything in that game is really dark and kind of gross looking. So it's
Mhm.
like when you're turning a camera and it's kind of jittery anyway, it's sort of harder to make sense of what is actually coming at you, like because of just the lighting or whatever on top of the frame rate and stuff like that. And it's frustrating because I know there is a very good game in there, and I just wish that there was a way to see it because I was even playing on on a PS4 Pro, like with either the boost mode on or off. It could not I could not get it to run at a what felt like it. Maybe it was playable but not an enjoyable frame rate, and that was And again, if you're not used to that stuff, it may not bother you even a little bit, but having you know by virtue of maybe being spoiled or whatever else with it, yeah, the frame rate's got to be there. That's really the only thing I care about is that a game plays at a good frame rate.
Yeah.
So
We'll see.
I will say with that announcement, since we're on PlayStation a little bit, they did you don't have to pull anything up for this, but it's basically saying that PlayStation announced that the DualShock 4 is going to work with the PlayStation 5 on PlayStation 4 titles, but it won't work with PlayStation 5 titles. So you'll still need the DualShock 5 or whatever they're calling it for their PS5 specific titles, but that it will work with PS4 titles. I imagine by virtue of whatever sensors and stuff they've added into this new one, and I think did they lose the trackpad at top? I can't remember if they've taken it off of the PS5 or not.
I think like
see a
the whole
PS5
thing is like the touch sense is supposed to emulate a lot of the features of the PS4. From what I heard, I could be wrong on that, but
Oh no, it
yeah.
does still have one. Yeah, it does still have one. Yeah, actually, that's like one of the thing I wonder about that too, though, is if they'll add support later on, because it's the same thing where like I will say Sony did more with that than other companies do, but you look at like the Wii U and it's like when it first started, there was like a lot of launch titles that used the second screen and then they just stopped really utilizing it. And then it
Yeah.
was like Kinect had a bunch of games and they just fucking said stop. And then I mean almost every one of them. It's same with the Wii U or the Switch is like a lot of games use motion controls and now most of them don't, or you can, but they're not really necessary. So I wonder if that's going to be another. I think Sony games used it more, but the touchpad is actually like nice. Like having used it with the PC a lot too, you can use it like a trackpad or like a mouse and stuff. So it's like kind of convenient for PC stuff. So I
Yeah,
actually don't.
I like the Steam features of like the controller configuration for PlayStation. And like there's some games out there that support like the UI change to the PlayStation button layout.
Yeah, a lot more games do now than they used to, but there are a lot of them coming out of the box have it. I like the PS4 controller though. I'm excited to get one of these new ones because I don't know if I'll get a PS5, but I'll grab a controller for sure.
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, if you had anything else,
I
that might.
think that might wrap it up. Oh, last thing, I guess. Marvel Avengers beta begins today on PC, PS4, and all that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I haven't played it because I mean, I personally don't care about Marvel characters or games or anything. I like Spider-Man,
I like
whatever.
the movies a decent amount, but I like the Spider-Man games that I've played over the years. I thought Ultimate Alliance, like when I was a kid, was pretty fun, but I've had no affinity
Yeah,
for Marvel games outside of all that.
sure. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I played that one growing up too. That was a good one. Yeah, to me, on face value, I haven't touched it. I've only watched a few people play through it.
Yeah.
It looks a lot like Anthem, to be honest. And I'd say I don't know either good or bad for you, especially since everyone's going to
I
play as Iron Man anyway. It seems a lot more like it's going to just be Anthem. Like I don't know, even in the same way as like the abilities seem like they add a little bit of poison damage and then like a little damage buff or whatever because it is this very like run based group game with different levels and stuff. But looking at the ability chart, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of room to expand. It just is like, hey, here's your punch. Here's your upgrade point for that punch, so it punches a little bit harder. And here's your other one, and this punch has a shockwave at the end of that punch. But it's sort of like for a game that seems like it wants you to keep playing and gearing up and running through the same instances, it seems like it's going to be pretty basic with that. And a lot of it feels very like scripted and super repetitive right out of the gate. Granted, it's a beta. I personally haven't played it, so I'm just speaking maybe from what I've seen. But I feel like generally I have a pretty good idea of what games look like and what they're going to be. And to me, again, face value, it looks. I mean, especially Iron Man. Watching him play, like he flies just like the Anthem and sort of lands and fights just kind of like that game. It's sort of like instead of if you took out the guns of that game and just added punching and superhero moves, and then spread those out over like however many characters there are, that's sort of the game.
Yeah.
And even kind of the menus look sort of similar. I don't know. It's really weird. Like it's a really strange game. And if you're a fan, you might love it because the cinematic stuff looks really nice, and
What
the
they
details
lost me
are
on
good.
was like the hype around the game when it was like being announced and like, oh, like Square Enix has this Avengers game coming out. That first reveal did like absolutely nothing for me. And then like seeing the like first footage of the beta that was out last weekend again really did nothing for me. And then they turn around and announce like, "Hey, Spider-Man's exclusive to PlayStation." I'm like, "Well, fuck, okay. Any semblance? My favorite Marvel hero. Like, I think
You're kind of the
98%
only
of
one I do like, yeah.
yeah, 98% of people love Spider-Man. So it's like, fuck. That if I were to get the
Well,
game, you're gonna rip that from me. So,
and I almost can't even fault them. I think that's more of an issue with Sony
oh yeah, of course.
needing you to give them something for you to put the thing on here, or signing whatever deal they did. And obviously, the developer's not totally out at fault, but I think that yeah, that's like that's on Sony. I think more than
It
them, I
just
would have to imagine.
seems it just seems
It's
like
shitty.
such a weird genre of game to build a live service around. Like the beat 'em up, like
Yeah,
it
but people
seems
fucking
so
love those
weird.
movies. So and that stuff. So maybe that's enough. You know,
Well, like
I don't know.
they had something like I haven't played the new Marvel game on Switch, like the Ultimate Alliance 3. I heard it like there's rough spots, but it's like if you liked those old games, it's pretty fun. But I
Mm.
remember playing Marvel Heroes for a little bit. I probably played that game for a couple months straight, and it was like the Diablo style like Marvel
Yeah,
game. That
yeah.
had some things going on. And I think if that had released like today, there would have been a different audience around it. I think it may have been a little too ahead of the curve as far as like Marvel's like prolific status in like pop culture today, like versus what it was when that game was out.
Well,
Um
it was. I mean, it was also a finished game when you got it. And I think that's another thing to take into account is like it was a, you know, you got the disc and the game was on it, and that was the
Oh
game.
well, I'm
Whereas
talking
it's
Marvel
like,
Heroes. Marvel Heroes was like the almost free to play MMO.
the online. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I thought you were talking about Alliance. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, outside of Alliance, I think like if they were to build a live service game around Marvel, they had it. They had it years ago, and then they canceled it. So
Well, I think that also came out around the time where MOBAs were picking up a lot of steam. So there was a lot of games that even if you didn't know what that game was, it kind of looked like a lot of other games just because it was a top-down sort of fight dudes kind of thing, and all MOBAs kind of looked like that.
yeah,
Even if just objectively looking at it and you go, "Oh, that's another one of those maybe," or something, and it's like, are they really bringing anything new to the table? But yeah, I did play that, and I remember enjoying most of it, or most of what I played with it. I will say too, I think the thing that game had an issue with is all the characters you had to pay for. Like, it wasn't like you only got, like, Deadpool or somebody and then the raccoon, I think, out of the gate, and then you were like, "Here is the, other one's piecemeal," or whatever.
yeah. I don't know. I, not like I don't know. Some dudes on the screen, so I apologize. But
Well, this is the weird thing too with this game is, like, the cinematics in it are not all of them are, like, they're just, like, kinda still framed, which
yeah.
seems weird because I mean, it's good that they put all the animation elsewhere, but it gives me this, I don't know, it just seems so fucking repetitive, and maybe that's really the thing that's throwing me off more than anything, but that's exactly w well,
Every
'cause it
like
feels
all
like
the footage I see of it looks the same, and like the levels are linear. Like it's not like a Destiny where like you have an open world kind of like you have these different
yeah,
planets that are like just a portion of the planet, but you at least have like plenty of activities to do on a big open map, and there's other people around. This it's
mhm.
like a point A to point B to point C to point D, like end mission. Like I don't know who this is made for, to be honest with you.
I I mean, I gotta assume it's just people that really love Marvel characters. I mean, I guess it's like if you I don't know, if this game was like, I try to think of it as, like, what other game is really similar to this other than Anthem? Because it's like that's like a franchise I understand, like, if you I'm trying to think of what is another equivalent. Yeah, 'cause, yeah, like, back at that screen, I was just looking at like, gear up thing. But this just I don't know, because there's also, like, whatever this character is, Miss Marvel, or I think, or who I don't know, Shazam. I don't know any of these characters, so I have no idea. I have no connection to this whatsoever. But I mean, again, looking at it objectively as a video game, I've seen this screen 100 times in games, so I know what I'm looking at here, and I can tell what these stats do, and then I look at the upgrade screen, I can tell what that means. and it just does. I don't know. It just doesn't look. It looks boring, man. I don't know. It just looks like a boring game, and I maybe I just still don't have the affinity for the superheroes, and maybe that's it. But it just like, as a game, it just looks fucking really repetitive.
I have not seen any sign of like, hey, different gear gives you different abilities, or like, hey, your character's like depending on stats and like where you're at in the game.
Oh no,
Like,
like pause on one of these, like see, because it'll sort of show you. Yeah, it'll be like, what is that? 15 increased damage from light combo finishers. Okay, so because I think you have just like light, heavy, and then a special attack and another thing, and then you can
like a
the skill
ranged
tree.
attack, yeah.
It looks like it seems like you get everything in the skill tree because they seem like it's per light has a skill tree that goes kind of straight down, and then it's like heavy has like a branching one, but it seems like you get everything out of each one. And I don't know that for sure, so I may be speaking out of my ass, but from what it looks like, you get everything for each character. So there's really not any build variety outside of like, do you want to hit with poison damage or do you just want to hit him harder? And
So it's Anthem. It's
so it is
Anthem.
kind of Anthem, except in Anthem, it would be like, do you want to hit this guy harder or do you want to get a new, better gun that hits him way less than the very basic gun you got at the beginning? But yeah.
Oh boy. Well, I really goofed the way that OBS is displaying Discord, so let me share my screen again, shall I?
Yeah,
Go.
that's fine. I was wondering what happened there.
Yeah, it's me just fucking up the whole
Monster
thing.
Train. Now that's a good video game.
So some thing in YouTube was just playing in the background. I don't know what I'm looking at right here, but
That's Monster Train, dog. That's a great roguelike card game. And
yeah.
it's very good.
Well, I don't know if I'll check out that Avengers game. I just really don't fucking care.
Well, I don't $60 care. I'll tell you that. Like
Yeah.
I would play
I don't
like, I
hit
wish
my
this beta was an open beta. I would totally try it.
I don't hit I don't
$60
have
for a
my
beta?
I'm not like I'm past my data cap gonna wait for this game to slowly download to play it, like even if it's free right now. That's not a good position for me to be in.
No, it just seems, I mean, it's out in like 3 weeks, so
Who
I'm
knows?
sure the reviews will give us a better idea. I think I can happily skip this one, though I am curious, having played a lot of Anthem, how similar it is to that game. But
I would love to see your impressions on it. So if you actually play some of it and you get a video up, let me know, because
if
well,
I
I'm
can
subbed,
find
I'll see
out,
it, so.
if I can find out if the beta is not tied to the overall gameplay of the game, then I would buy it and return it and play the beta. But if it is tied to my hour play on that, then no, because I don't want to pay $60 for this game. Again, knowing I would, Mario Galaxy exists, or not Mario Galaxy, but Origami King and other shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If I can find a way to play it, I will try to play it, but don't hold your breath.
Yeah, I'm not. Don't worry. No
I
part
know
of
you're
me is
chomping at the
super
bit
excited.
to know about how good this Marvel Square Enix mashup is, but
I wish
it's
it was
like
like Kingdom Hearts. I wish they went full Kingdom Hearts and it was just like Marvel characters with Sora and the gang going around and unlocking keyholes.
Do Kingdom Hearts 15 right now. I mean, there's a million of them. Do Kingdom Hearts Marvel Edition. Who gives a fuck, man? They're gonna be.
Fuck it.
Weren't they in 3 anyway?
No. It was Big Hero 6, which is based on a Marvel's Kid property or something like that. But
hold on, I feel like there was there not?
no, I mean,
why Kingdom Hearts 3 doesn't have Marvel or Star Wars for one major reason. Okay, got it.
It was like rumored, like heavily rumored before the game came out that stuff was coming, but.
Well, I think they bought it, like bought both of those quite a bit into the development already.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's probably got to be a big thing. Plus, the other thing is too, if you're gonna do that, you have to add all of that shit. Like you have to have every Marvel character in there, so you don't piss off anybody.
Next week, I want to give my thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 3 because I have not done that publicly, and it's been eating me alive.
Okay, well we can take 5 hours to do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Because I imagine it's going to be a long one. I know nothing about it, so I would love to hear it. I don't really
Okay.
know anything about Kingdom Hearts, so
Next week I will try to give you my 10-minute very quick reasons I loathe that game.
my 10 that turns into 40-minute rant.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Because that's everything I've started saying. I'm like, and I'll say this really quickly. Here's 45 minutes of what I actually
Here's
think.
the deal, though. This week, I am very glad for it, though, because I have not had a whole lot of time to play games. I've been looking at a lot
Fair.
of news, but I have not had a whole lot of time to play games. So when you are able to get into something like that, it saves me from having to do that myself. So I
Fair enough.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
guys, that is episode 2. I'm happy y'all joined along. Sorry some of those rants went on for a very long time. Or not sorry if you liked them. I'm happy that they went on that long. It just depends, I guess.
yeah.
But hey, that's video games, and it's your birthday. So we will, from all the folks here at your birthday, we wanted to wish you a happy birthday. And we'll see you guys in the next one next Friday. Hopefully we'll have this out. So, or next Friday we'll have another episode out. This Friday, tomorrow we'll have this one out, or today when you're watching it, if it's Friday. You guys,
Thank
I'm
you,
cutting
guys.
all that out.